Hey, it's the Midnight Narrator here. Tonight, I'm handing the mic to Mia. She kept a journal. She swears she wrote it in daylight. You and I both know it sounds like rain at 3 in the morning. Let's go. Chapter 1. The House only repeats what we give it. I arrived before the others because I don't like walking into a room after the laughter has chosen its corners. The drive had been 5 hours of wet road and the rare, clean silence you only get when the wipers fall into a rhythm that feels like a heartbeat. The mansion rose from the cliff like old teeth. Victorian, many-windowed, its paint a peel of gray and salt. The listing had called it the Hanover, as if names could stop rot. I parked, cut the engine, and the sea's hush rolled up the hill. It sounded like applause in a distant theater, someone thanking an audience I couldn't see. My phone still had a single bar. The addressed text from Alex hung on the screen. Punctual as always, the way he liked to be when he was about to break a rule. "Leave at 9, he'd added, a smiley face that looked like a button someone might press during a fire drill. I closed the phone, tucked it into my coat pocket, and carried my bag up the slick steps. The key was in the lockbox, and the lockbox code was, of course, 1923, a year that made my stomach tilt. I told myself it was coincidence. I tell myself that a lot. The foyer smelled like wet wool and varnish, and something sweet beneath it, like old cough syrup. A chandelier made of cut glass hung from the ceiling, its pieces tinkling as the door closed behind me, and the house took a breath. The walls were lined with framed photographs whose subjects had faded to the cusp of vanishing. A woman seated, a doctor standing, a garden that might have been roses or might have been 100 little fists. "Hello?" I said, because it's something therapists do. We test a room for the shape of our voice. "Hello," the room said back, very faintly. No, that's not quite right. It didn't say it. The chandelier chimed and the banister creaked, and the sound those two things made together sat near hello, like when your name is called across a station and a stranger turns their head. I set my bag down. I listened. Outside, the rain struck the windows in a steady tin rhythm. Shh, shh, shh. I counted without meaning to. 1, 2, 3, 4. My counting is a bad habit that pretends to be helpful. Alex called as I was learning the foyer's dark. "You're there? Perfect. Can you scope the parlor? I want a hero shot when we arrive. Big stairs, haunted vibes. The audience eats it." "Hero shots don't eat," I said. "They're photographs?" He chuckled, unbothered by my correction. "Semantics, Doc. We'll be an hour. Jordan's arguing with the GPS. Sarah brought pastries. Tyler is Tyler. You okay?" "I'm fine," I said, which is the sort of lie that has the decency to hold the door for truth. "The house is talkative." "Save it for the mics," he said, softer now, as if he'd heard something under my words. "See you soon." I found the parlor, and the parlor found me. A broad room with a bay window tall as a chapel, and shelves filled with books whose spines were tight with dust. 2 green couches faced each other like rivals forced to share a stage. In the corner, on a slender table, sat a phonograph with a brass horn, its needle resting in a cradle, as if napping. Above the fireplace hung a portrait of the Hanover's original owner, a psychiatrist named Dr. Sorrell, painted with the sort of realism that makes the eyes just a bit too clever. The plaque below it read, "Sorrell, 1881-1930. The smile was small and closed and sure. I crossed to the phonograph, because I have an embarrassing affection for objects that remember how to sing. A drawer beneath it slid open easily, as if my fingers were the correct password. Inside, a stack of shellac records in paper sleeves. The top one had a title written in a sharp, looping hand. Session, H. Fallon, November 3rd. The year had been smudged. I slid the record free, felt its weight, and set it down. I didn't wind the spring. I only looked at it for a long time, and in that long time, I felt the little air currents in the parlor steer around me like schools of fish. The front door opened, then laughter, then footsteps, the sort that the floorboards accept without complaint. Sarah called, "Mia, this place is a novel." "In the tragic tradition," Jordan said, voice wrapped in mischief. Tyler's duffel thumped like a body being convinced to be luggage. Alex's camera bag moved like an animal who knew its cage well. I closed the drawer and met them in the foyer. We did the awkward, sincere hug thing estranged friends do. Quick shoulders, careful hands. Tyler smelled like rain and menthol. Sarah's hair was pinned up with a pencil. Jordan wore a hoodie that said, "There is no ghost," which I suspected was either bait or armor. Alex kissed my temple like we were still good at this. "Welcome to the Hanover," I said, and something in the chandelier replied, a bright clink like a glass politely set down. We toured like people do when they pretend history is a museum and not a mirror. The kitchen had copper pots that would have kept soup warm for a long time if anyone still bothered. The dining room had a table capable of seating 12, which felt like a dare. Upstairs, the bedrooms chose us. Mine faced the sea and had a narrow balcony. The wallpaper was a pattern of climbing ivy that, in the corner of my eye, sometimes leaned toward the window like a listener. On the nightstand, an old radio sat with its dial glass clouded, a little brass plate beneath it engraved with the word echo in a serif that made me think of melted candles. "Alex," I called, "did you see this?" He appeared in my doorway, framing me with his camera just a beat too long to be unintentional. "Radio? That's perfect. I can mic the static. You look good here." "I'm not a prop," I said, then softened it with a smile he wouldn't accept. He lowered the camera. "Right. Sorry." Jordan popped his head in, one eyebrow lifted. "Wi-Fi is trash, but there's a router. I can maybe nurse it. Also, there's a smart thermostat with a name. The name is Pansy, which is either adorable or a cry for help." "Don't rename the house," Sarah said, appearing with a paper bag. "Pastries and tea. And I saw a stack of records downstairs, and if no one stops me, I will put on a waltz and haunt us all." Tyler came last, leaned in the door jamb with a grin that looked borrowed. "Basement's a no from me. It smells like metal and rain." "Basements usually do," I said. "Not like this," he said, and rolled his shoulders and made it a joke. "I'll take the room near the stairs. Easy escape." We settled, which is to say we arranged our anxiety into piles and called them luggage. Alex hung blankets over the bay window for light control. Sarah draped a scarf over a lampshade and made the room blush. Jordan cursed tenderly at the router until it offered a stubborn, blinking yes. Tyler prowled the hallway and returned with a set of keys he claimed he found in a drawer, each one tagged with a small paper label. Attic, cellar, office, chamber. "Chamber," he said, delighted. "That's not ominous at all." "Don't," I said too quickly. Let's be guests." "Guests who go live at 9, Alex said again. but this time his voice softened at the edges. He moved a mic stand an inch to the left and nodded to himself like he'd solved a puzzle. Okay, folks, eat, breathe, keep it conversational. Mia, if you want to talk about, atmospheric cues, that would be, don't script me, I said, and touched his wrist, and then we both pretended I hadn't. We ate. The pastries were apricot and flake. The tea was chamomile. The rain practiced its long monologue against the glass. 8:30 came, and a slowness settled on me like someone had placed a hand on my shoulder from behind. It wasn't unkind, just insistent. I wandered back to the parlor while the others fussed with cables. The phonograph waited, its horn patient. I told myself I wouldn't touch it again, and of course I did. I turned the crank once, twice, 3 times. The spring tightened like breath before a confession. I set the needle carefully and lowered it. The record woke with a soft hiss, the long velvet kind that makes a listener sit up straighter. For a second, nothing else. Then a man's voice, calm and conditioned by good microphones. Session, he said, with H. Fallon. November 3rd, 19... The year dissolved in a small warp. Patient reports. Echoes. The interposed voice. A woman answered far away or speaking through a scarf. It isn't an interposed voice, Doctor. It's mine, but later it gets ahead of me. It says the thing I'm going to say. Alex appeared in the doorway, his smile excellent and dangerous. Oh, Mia, that's gold. Don't stop. He huddled over the phonograph with delight. Jordan slid in with a handheld recorder. Sarah sat on the arm of a couch, eyes bright, pastry forgotten on a napkin. Tyler stood by the door, arms folded, trying to look as if nothing could ever impress or haunt him. Go live in 5, Alex said. Don't mention names. Don't mention the listing. Just feel it. The record continued. The doctor asked Fallon to describe the phenomena. She did, and her voice cracked on certain words. Sorry, window again. As if a throat learns which syllables rut into guilt. Then, under her voice, a second voice, a breath behind the first, whispered the same sentence a beat earlier. It was like listening to a creek that had learned all our habits and was practicing them for us. The hair on my forearms rose gentle and inexplicable. The radio on my nightstand upstairs, cold, distant, clicked on. We all heard it. None of us had turned it. The house held its breath. And then, from the ceiling vent, or from a seam in a wall, or from the chandelier's throat, a very soft version of my voice said, "Hello." Not exactly my current hello, but the way I had said it when I'd first stepped in from the rain. We stared at one another, participants in a game we had not agreed to play. Alex's eyes were more alive than I meant to notice. "We're rolling," he whispered, though we hadn't officially begun. "We are very, very rolling." I swallowed. The phonograph hushed into its hiss. The rain wrote the same sentence over and over. I said to the room, "If you're only repeating what we give you, please be kind." "Be kind," the vent said, one beat ahead of me. We went live at 9. Chapter 2, Live with a Delay. We didn't count down. Alex lifted a hand, and that was enough. The little red light on his camera winked at us like a lighthouse that had decided to turn its beam inward. The parlor changed when he went live. Even the dust behaved. Sarah folded her legs under her on the couch and clasped a mug with both hands like a stage direction for gentle. Jordan perched on a footstool, laptop balanced, an improvised nest of cables haloing his sneakers. Tyler stood at the window, a silhouette cut from something stubborn. I took the armchair closest to the phonograph and wished, briefly, that I had a shawl. Nothing makes you feel more like a witness than a shawl. "Welcome back to No Such Thing," Alex said, voice lowered a notch from normal speech, the way we talk in libraries and with babies. "Tonight, we're broadcasting from a historic property on the coast, details redacted for privacy, and we're investigating respectfully the stories that have collected here. Our team is family, really?" He let that word float a moment. I almost corrected it. Then I didn't. The camera drifted past us, his hand steady. "We'll be rolling a blend of analog and digital. Old tech can act as a mirror. New tech can catch what we miss. Mia, therapist, observer, my better brain half, will guide us when the house gets ahead of us. Say hello, Mia." "Hello," I said, and the chandelier chimed an agreement that didn't feel like mockery. I heard the radio upstairs, faint as far rain, a filament warming, a click, a hand lifted from a violin string, then, almost in time with me, softer, "Hello." Jordan grinned, eyebrows up, the way you grin when a coin does a trick you do not know. He typed. "Chat is already spicy," he said. 300 live. Comments want to know if we staged the radio." "We didn't," Sarah murmured, to the room, to the microphone pinned to her sweater. She tucked a lock of hair behind her ear and smiled small and sincere at Alex's lens. "If we had, it wouldn't have been this elegant." Alex motioned to the phonograph. "We found session records in the parlor. Dr. Sorrell recorded interviews with patients suffering what they described as echo phenomena. We are going to listen lightly and see if the house responds. If it does, we'll respond back with gratitude." He looked at me, and the look translated to, "Take care of us." I nodded once, which translated to, "I'll try." I lifted the tone arm. The record had cooled during our setup. The shellac felt denser, as if whatever had been speaking had burrowed deeper. I lowered the needle, and the hiss bloomed again. Veil lifted from a fountain. The doctor's voice. "Miss Fallon, when did you first perceive the repeats?" she said over him, a half-second earlier, and then again the same word, present tense. "Repeats? Repeats?" Tyler snorted, but kindly. "It's like she's stepping on her own heels." "You ever do that?" Sarah asked. "Only on stairs," he said, and the camera caught the smile that lived underneath the bravado like a bird under eaves. We listened. The house listened with us. Something in the ductwork sighed, as if an old lung had finally gotten a draft of night air. I noticed how Alex let the silence linger. He wasn't chasing proof as much as he was inviting it. We backfilled with breath and the occasional question from chat that Jordan read out. Voice light. A user Lighthouse Orchid asked, "Does a house have a history with audio, like was it a radio station or something?" He glanced at me. "Not that we know," I said, "but we tend to build our prisons out of whatever's fashionable. In the 1920s, sound was modern. It promised that you could be in 2 rooms at once." "How many rooms are we in now?" Sarah asked softly. It was exactly the right kind of question. The phonograph stuttered. Miss Fallon's voice wavered, then came into a bolder focus. "Sometimes I hear it before it happens. I say, 'Don't open that window,' and then I hear my voice from the future telling me not to, and then I say it. It isn't that I am warned, it's that I am already tired of saying it." "Thank you," I said, before I remembered that she wasn't here to be thanked. "Thank you," the radio upstairs whispered, a breath early. Jordan's fingers paused on the keys. Alex lowered the camera and raised it again, a reflex, as if a blink had to be filmed. Tyler turned from the window. He tapped the glass twice, toe, toe, and waited. The rain tapped once, toe, and then a quicker, anticipatory tap, as if someone outside wanted to get the timing right. We didn't move for a long breath. The house, delighted by an audience, practiced its imitations. The chandelier sighed, wood settled, far pipes talked to near pipes. It all would have been easy to dismiss if not for the way the imitations were a half beat ahead, like sheet music laid over a live band. "Experiment," Alex said, the word bright enough to ring. Call and response. Tyler asked the house a neutral question. Tyler tried on a few in his head, then chose one with no teeth. What time is it?" I frowned before the house answered, "'cause that question is a trap in places like this. Time is exactly what haunted houses hoard. In the vent, a rustle. In the radio, a breath. In the phonograph, the soft shift of felt. Then, in my own voice, just ahead of my next breath, 9:12. I looked at my watch. It was 9:12. "Don't ask it to count for us," I said, too quickly. "Counting is—" I stopped. "Counting is a way to hand someone your pulse." Alex nodded, mouth tightened, and his eyes said, "Noted. New rule, no numbers." "Chat agrees," Jordan said. "Also, user past this practice wants to know if we can move to another room to see if the effect follows." We took our microphones as if they were small skittish pets and carried them to the dining room. The table there had a runner with embroidered ferns, hand-stitched, a little uneven in the most sincere way. 12 chairs looked down their noses at us. Sarah set a candle in the middle and didn't light it. "Better to ask nicely first," she said. The air felt colder, not unfriendly. My breath didn't smoke, but it felt like it wanted to. I placed my palm on the back of a chair and felt a faint vibration. No, not vibration. A memory of a vibration. Like when the washing machine's already finished, but your hand thinks it still hums. "Dr. Sorrell wrote about a central room," I said quiet, "for us and for anyone listening with us. He called it an echo chamber, not in the metaphorical sense. He built a room he thought could tidy people's thoughts by letting them hear themselves clearer. That isn't how it works." "How does it work?" Sarah asked. "We hear what we need the most," I said, and even as I said it, I wanted to take it back and say something kinder. Or what we fear we'll never stop saying. I didn't like the dining room. The rug had a long wave down one side, like it had been wet for a long time, and then learned to keep its shape. Alex caught my look and shifted the frame so the wave wasn't a character. He was being gentle. I respected that. The radio upstairs clicked off. The parlor's phonograph hissed in our absence like a pot left on simmer. "Let's split for a bit," Alex said, eyes on the chat, the algorithm a second invisible audience. "Pairs, Mia and Sarah, upstairs sweep. Jordan and Tyler, kitchen and back hallway. I'll float. Keep mics open. We do not go in the basement yet." "Because it smells like metal and rain," Tyler said, relieved to be brave on the first floor. "Because it smells like metal and rain," Alex agreed. We moved. The house rearranged its breath. Stair treads talked, that honest oak complaint that registers bodies, not names. As Sarah and I climbed, she bumped my shoulder once, a tiny, silly thing that used to make exam days survivable. "I brought charcoals," she whispered. If the house wants a portrait, I can sketch what it says instead of writing it down. There's mercy in drawing, I said. You can leave out edges. I always do, she said, and softly laughed like she was defrosting. Upstairs, the hallway windows reflected the lamps behind us, and in those glass panes, we looked like a procession carrying nothing, which felt right. The door to my room was ajar. The radio's dial glowed the way eyes do when sleep hasn't quite claimed them. I had not turned it on. I had not turned it off. It sat at a station that didn't exist. Between numbers, a thin seam where announcers go to drink water. The static wasn't harsh. It was soft as a sweater. Words came through it in the shape of words, the way heat makes shapes over asphalt. Listen, Sarah said, and we did. Heads tilted like birds. The static breathed in my cadence. If you're only repeating what we give you, it whispered ahead of me, please, be kind. It played a sentence I'd said downstairs, but sweeter, like a lullaby had been draped over it. I felt a ridiculous urge to answer it like it was a child practicing a difficult line in a school play. Thank you for trying, I said. For trying, the static hummed, pleased with itself. Sarah went to the balcony door. The latch was brass. She touched it and shivered. Cold. Don't open it, I said. A reflex. Don't open it, the static said, smiling with my mouth. She didn't. She stepped back, hands lifted in surrender. Okay. We checked the other upstairs rooms, the wardrobes, the undersides of beds, the places anyone who'd been a child would look. We found nothing but the kind of old house secrets that make for fond ghost stories. A scrap of ribbon under a dresser, a stub of pencil in a desk like a sleeping bee, a book of pressed ferns that had become a map of patience. Once, in the bathroom, the faucets ticked as if cooling from use, though we hadn't used them. I reached and felt them, cool, not hot. The mirror had a silvered corner where the backing had surrendered. In that ruined triangle, my face looked like a face I might grow into if I were given enough evenings like this one. Watchful, kind, a little tired of saying, be kind. We heard Jordan and Tyler on the comms, low. Kitchen has knives, Jordan said, as if reporting a meteorological fact. They're boring knives, no dramatic carving sets, which is honestly nice. Back hallway has family photos, Tyler said. His voice ran soft in that way that happens when an athlete walks into a church and remembers they were also a kid once. Some frames are empty, like they're saving seats. Don't count them, I said, before I could help it. A beat. Copy, Tyler said. No numbers. Alex's voice floated up the stairwell from somewhere in between. Sound floor just dipped, like the whole house took off its shoes. Document what you can without poking the bear. We're not poking anything, Sarah said, which would have comforted me if the radio hadn't chosen that moment to learn a new trick. It began humming a tune. Not words, just the shape of something every child is hummed at least once when they've cried too long and the house wants them to sleep. My throat tightened in a warm way. I knew that tune because everyone knows that tune. But the radio played it a beat ahead of our recognition, and then my mouth found itself echoing it back. And then the radio praised me by finding the harmony I don't have. It's sweet, Sarah whispered, eyes shiny in the lamplight. It wants us to relax, I said, and I meant it wants us open. We sat on my bed. The mattress had the pleasant honesty of coils. The radio warmed the room with a sound that wasn't heat, but behaved like it. Far below, A door hinge gave a theatrical sigh. "Should we turn it off?" Sarah asked, though neither of us reached. "It might do that thing when you tell a cat to stop and it hears perform," I said. She smiled. "So we let it sing?" "We let it sing," I said. The lullaby shifted keys. The hairs on my arms rose, less with fear than with a sudden memory of a nightlight soft circle on a carpet when I was small. I thought of my father's voice on a Sunday after rain. I thought of how sound can make a room safe because it proves something is alive enough to move the air. The radio, delighted by our stillness, tried one more experiment. It took my voice from an hour ago, pulled the hello I'd offered to the foyer, and stretched it slowly until the vowels became the C. Sarah squeezed my hand. "I think," she said, "it likes you." "I think it likes anyone who listens," I said. We turned our microphones down to breathe without feeding the audience our lungs. We didn't turn them off. The house would have heard the click. We sat very quietly in a room that felt like the inside of a conch shell, and we let the past practice being present. That was when the comms picked up a voice that wasn't ours and wasn't the radio and wasn't the phonograph. It came light through Jordan's mic as he leaned near the back hallway vent, curious as a child who hears branches against a pane. The voice said, in a whisper that was not shy so much as careful, "I'm here." A pause, then Jordan's soft, unpracticed response, "Who?" And then, half a beat early, from the vent, already answering him, "Who?" Chapter 3, The House Learns Our Names. Jordan didn't run. That's not his speed. He leaned closer to the vent the way some people lean into a song they almost remember. "Say it again?" he asked, gentle as a librarian. "Again," the vent said, arriving a breath before he did, as if the house wanted him to feel successful. I thumbed my mic back up and stood. Sarah rose with me, a soft rustle of skirt. We crossed the hallway without hurrying, because hurrying teaches old wood to complain. As we reached the top of the stairs, Alex's figure appeared below, camera in one hand, the other out to steady its banister, like he was greeting an animal he hoped would let him near. He glanced up at us. He didn't need to speak. The look said, "We're okay." The look also said, "Please keep it okay." "Who are you?" Jordan asked the vent. But that was the wrong shape of question. Names in houses like this are not keys. They're nests. "Try a different approach," I said halfway down the staircase now, the rail polished by a century of hands. "Ask what it needs, or what it hears." Jordan nodded, thoughtful enough to be trusted, and revised. "What do you hear?" The vent sighed once, like parchment bent and unbent. Then my voice came out of it, very softly, the way you mimic a friend, because it's the closest you can come to drawing them. "Rain," the vent said. "Shoes. Be kind." He smiled as if the house had passed a small exam. "Us then. You hear us?" "Us," the vent agreed, pleased to be included. Tyler stood in the back hallway like a sentry trying to appear casual. The family photos he'd mentioned lined the wall. Sepia faces and stiff collars. A picnic where everyone had the posture of someone who's been told about the camera too late. There were indeed empty frames threaded among them. They didn't look hungry. They looked patient. "Don't put your face in the empty ones," I said to Alex, because I know him. "Wasn't going to," he lied politely. Sarah drifted to a low table under the frames. On it, a ledger lay open, its paper rippled from a long-ago damp, edges browned like toast. She hovered her hand over the page, but did not touch. Admissions, she murmured. Dates, initials, notes. Eccentric auditory phenomena, repeats, delays, anticipations. She tilted her head. And drawings. Look, in the margins, someone had sketched small waveforms, as if trying to show a future reader how a voice looks when it runs ahead of itself. Peaks nested inside peaks, little anticipatory teeth. Jordan angled the light. Chat's asking if we can read an entry, he said. We don't read names, I said. We can summarize. People aren't content. Copy, he said, and his fingers relayed it to the silent, glowing sea that had decided to keep us company tonight. Tyler gestured down the hallway toward a door half swallowed by shadow. The paper label on its key, which he'd pocketed earlier, had said chamber in a looping hand. The door itself was painted the same color as the wall, an old trick. That's the one, he said, his voice trying to sit on the fence between dare and caution. Smells like metal and rain, even out here. I felt the temperature press against my cheeks, the way a theater's air changes when the curtain thinks about rising. We can stand near it, I said. We don't have to open it. We arranged ourselves like a small, nervous choir at the threshold. Alex framed the door, but left the outer edge of the shot loose so nothing from the dark would have to squeeze to get in. The house like that. It's a relief when someone lets you have your own margins. Okay, he said quiet. We're near a door marked chamber, historically an acoustic space. We're going to test call and response without entering. Mia? I don't like to perform, which is a strange admission for someone speaking into a room full of microphones. But I've learned a trick. Talk to one person you love and assume everyone else is listening politely. I touched the doorknob with 2 fingertips. It was cool, not cold. Hello, I said, and then a little steadier. We don't want to take anything from you. We just want to know how to be good guests. What do you need? A pause that wasn't empty, so much as thoughtful. The metal under my fingertips warmed by a degree, and in that warmth I felt the memory of palms, so many palms, asking for forgiveness from an object that couldn't grant it. Then the vent near the floor answered in a voice that wore my mouth because it didn't know how else to ask. Stay. The word arrived a fraction ahead of the one I would have said next. It knocked my next sentence off its rails in a gentle way. I took a breath and let the plan change. We can sit, I said. We can listen. Listen, the radio upstairs whispered as if offering accompaniment. We sat right there on the hallway runner. Sarah tucked her knees in and pulled out a charcoal pencil. If it's impolite to draw, she told the door, you can make the nib break. I'll understand. It didn't. It let her sketch the negative space around the door, the way the paint had cracked into river delta lines. The little dent at shoulder height where someone once leaned too hard. She left the handle itself as an absence. See? She murmured. Mercy. Alex, who can be impatient with everything except sound, lowered his camera to his lap and closed his eyes. He does this sometimes. Stops shooting to prove to himself that the shot matters. Jordan, who's most himself with toys to hand, set his laptop aside and pulled a small battery-powered recorder from his pocket, the kind journalists use when they have to catch a truth quickly. He placed it carefully by the baseboard. Question, he said, to the house, to us. If you repeat what we give you, can you not? Can you show us what happens if you decide? decide, the vent said, as if tasting the word spine. We waited. Waiting is the real work. The rain settled into a softer handwriting. The house's breath evened. In the parlor behind us, the phonograph, left to its own devices, found the groove again and kept the hiss alive like a bedside lamp left on for a nervous guest. Then, from somewhere in the wall, maybe from a cavity in the lathe, maybe from the pipe that no longer moved water, a new voice. Not mine, not any of ours. A woman, but worn to light by time, the way a word on a sign fades to a vowel. She said very softly, "I can try." Tyler's head lifted like a dog hearing the car it loves. You hear that? His bravado had slid down a little. Under it lived a kid who believed summer houses had secret doors and that his feet might find them first. I heard it, I said. I did not say her. It's tender to grant personhood too quickly in a house like this. It turns the walls into stage hands. "Thank you. Thank you," the new voice said, but not ahead this time, with us, choosing to answer, not anticipating it. Sarah's charcoal caught on a paper fiber and almost break, then recovery. She looked pleased, like the house had taken her class and passed. "Can you tell us what happens in the chamber?" Alex asked, careful not to command. "You don't have to show us, just what it's for." A long, low exhale moved through the wood, the sound a cello makes when a player rests their cheek against it and hums. The air cooled and then warmed, a tide without water. "It keeps," the voice said. "It keeps what we say. It keeps what we almost say. It keeps the thing we practice in our heads and hope no one hears." Sarah's pencil went still. Alex swallowed. I think he thought of his sister then, though he would never say her name on air. I thought of my father's bathroom door and the way a hallway grows longer when you know what's at the other end. "It's okay," I said, not to the house. To us. "Okay." The radio upstairs agreed, dull as a stamp, but then after, "Okay," the softer voice said again, choosing the timing herself. Jordan flicked his recorder off, then on. A habit he apologizes for and can't quite quit. He smiled at the door as if it were a neighbor stoop we'd finally sat on after years of waving from cars. "We're not here to fix you," he said, and I nodded hard in my head because, yes, that. "We're here to be with you for a little while." "With you," the house said, and the words were not anyone's voice this time. They were the air itself, arranging its pressure around our faces. We could have stayed there all night, if not for the small sound from the parlor that tugged at the edge of the frame like a child with a hymn. It was a polite clatter, nothing broken, a drawer open perhaps, or a book resettling. Alex's camera rose. "Hold a minute," he said, as if the house had asked to be excused. We stood, gentle, the way you stand when you've been comforting someone and have to pretend you weren't. We carried our microphones and our attention back to the parlor. The phonograph sat as we'd left it, horn a sleeping trumpet. The drawer underneath, the one I'd found the records in, was open by 2 inches. Inside, the same stack of sleeves, but on top, not the Fallon session. A different one, labeled in the same tidy hand, Session M. Arlen, November 7th. Sarah breathed in. "Your initials," she said, then blushed for the coincidence, for the human instinct to draw lines between things that only rhyme. "Today's date," Jordan said softly, then looked at me with an apology tucked inside the fact. We had promised the house no numbers. He hadn't spoken a number, he had spoken a day. "It's fine," I said, even though part of my brain was already arranging reasons why it wasn't. We don't have to play every record. We didn't. We could have closed the drawer. We could have taken a group breath and gone back to the hallway and asked the air to tell us what kindness looks like in a house with this much memory. We could have, and maybe in a wiser version of the night we did. But the record on top bore a title that leaned toward us like a friend telling a secret across a booth. There was a little fleck of shellac missing from its edge in the shape of a teardrop. The envelope's paper felt softly oily from 100 fingers, and the date, today's, put a warm coin in my palm and asked if I wanted to buy a ticket for a train that might already be arriving. Alex didn't touch it. He looked at me. "I don't want to hear my name in that voice," I said, which was true, "but I want to hear what someone thought I would say." He nodded. We listen. We do not summon. We stop if it feels like taking. We arranged ourselves again, the ritual now practiced. Camera, mics, breath. I turned a crank once, twice, not 3 times. We could be superstitious and scientific at once. I lowered the needle. The hiss rose like steam, lifting a kitchen window. Then the doctor's voice, measured, polite. "Session, M. Arlen, November 7th, 19... The year blurred. Paper rustled. A chair creaked. He cleared his throat the way men do when they hope to clear a century. Patient reports anticipatory echoing of her own speech. Patient reports reluctance to speak aloud for fear of becoming future's weather. Then the patient's voice answered, and it was not mine. Not really. It was how the house understood me. Edges softened by listening. Vowels warmed by grief. Consonants set down gently so they could be picked up again by other mouths. "I don't want to teach the walls my worst sentences," she said, "but they already know them." Sarah's hand found mine without looking. Tyler stood closer than he had at any point that night. Jordan's eyes moved between us and the track marks the needle left, as if readable. The radio upstairs did not repeat. The vent did not anticipate. The house let the room be present just this once. "Okay," I said, to the woman on the record and to the door down the hall and to the waves getting tired of their own arguments. "We'll speak only what we can carry." "Carry," the house said, "after me this time, like a promise." Chapter 4, What We Can Carry. Alex ended the segment the way you tuck a child in. Soft voice thanks to the listeners, a promise to return after we changed locations. He did not say after the house caught its breath, but that's what we all needed. The red light blinked off. The room slumped into its everyday shape. You never realize how much you're holding your shoulders up for a camera until you don't have to. "We can take 5, he said, and the words sounded like an apology to the air. "Tea?" Sarah offered, half rising. "Tea," I said, grateful for a ritual with steam. We drifted to the kitchen like small boats that had agreed not to race. The house liked the kitchen. Tile cool underfoot, a window that let in rain scent, a row of hooks with 3 aprons that had seen soups and laughter. The kettle objected briefly to being woken and then forgave us. Tyler found mugs, each imperfect in a generous way. One had a chip that made the lip feel like a memory. Another had a hairline crack glazed smooth as a healed scar. Jordan leaned against the counter, still wired to the comms, but lower private channel. "Chat's labeling the voice," he said, eyes on his screen, then up at us as if asking permission to bring the outside in. Not a name. Nobody's doxing a ghost, but a nickname. They're calling her kindly because of the timing. Alex smiled at that, a small relief. He liked when the crowd chose tenderness. Let's not make her perform to it, he said. The radio upstairs, faint as cloud light, clicked once like a polite door tap. It didn't turn on. It was just a still here. We all heard it and pretended we hadn't, the way you pretend you don't notice a friend rehearing a story they've told before. Sarah poured hot water over bags, the little amber swirl that feels like medicine for evenings. The kitchen settled around us. For a few minutes, we spoke like people who didn't owe the night anything. Travel, work, the scandal of a pastry so good it didn't need frosting. Tyler told a story about running in rain so loud it stitched his breath to the road. Jordan confessed he once coded an alarm to play ocean sounds when his heart rate rose. Alex admitted that he sometimes recorded a greeting 5 times alone in his car before he walked into a place, calling his voice up like a waiter with a tray of nerves and charm. I held my mug and let the warmth tell my fingers what to do. The steam smelled like apples that had read books. I don't like that a record knew my initials, I said finally. Coincidence, Jordan said, then winced at his own reflex. Or not. Both can be true. The ledger had dozens of M's, Sarah murmured. And Arlen, people come here, they come and come, names rhyme. I know, I said. I did. And still, the alphabet was a room I didn't want to walk past just now. I carried my tea to the back door and looked through the glass at the little yard, grass glossy with rain, a clothesline strung between 2 tired posts, clothespins sleeping like birds. The fog made a wall beyond the fence. If there were neighbors, they were rumors. Before we go back on, Alex said behind me, gentle, let's set a rule. He was asking me to set it. That meant I had to hear the worst of our possibilities out loud and craft a sentence we could carry. No basement tonight, I said. Tyler exhaled in a way that sounded like he'd been dared and then reprieved. No chamber door. We don't ask for specific people. We don't offer confessions we can't hold after the mics are off. Repeatables only, Jordan said, approving, like passwords you can change. Not passwords, I said, softer than I meant. Passwords make friends into locks. He nodded, chastened, but not hurt. We returned to the parlor with our cups, the phonograph quiet now, needle lifted as if asleep in a chair. The drawer with the records had stayed obediently closed. The portrait of Dr. Sorrell watched without flinching, the painter's hand so sure of his face that the eyes never learned to blink. I wanted something living to look at, so I looked at us. Damp cuffs, warm fingers, bright pupils, a collective posture that said we were ready to listen and maybe ready to be listened to. Before we roll, Sarah said, I want to leave something. Not words. She set a small square of thick paper on the side table and sketched the shape of the phonograph horn with a few careful arcs, charcoal whispering on the tooth of the page. She added the suggestion of a room around it, the curve of a couch, the way the window made a tall idea of light. There, if the house likes it, it can keep it. Alex lifted the camera again, then lowered it. We can do another block in here, he said. Or we can try your room. Again, Mia. The gentle echo seems to like you. It likes listening, I said, which felt safer than claiming any specific affection. Let's split again if we do, but slower. The plan gathered itself. Alex would start with a short parlor intro, then drift to the hallway, Jordan would take a quiet loop through the kitchen and back hall, audio only, just a sound bed for the stream. Sarah and I would return to my room, sit with the radio, see if the lullaby had learned any new verses without needing ours. Tyler would float, visuals, door checks, a pair of eyes where we needed them. "Copy," he said, and saluted the house as if it were a coach whose rules he could actually respect. We went live. The red light breathed, small and steady. Alex opened with gratitude, as always. Even skeptics can be devout about thanks. He gave the audience the shape of what we'd try, not the guarantee. The chat count crawled up like ivy. Jordan muted most of it so the overflow wouldn't drown our pores. The upstairs hall took our footsteps and smoothed them. In my room, the radio sat prim as ever, the little brass echo plate winking in lamplight. I did not touch the dial. I sat on the edge of the bed. Sarah took the chair with the quilt folded over its back like a shawl lent by a friend. "Hello," I said, because I can't stop welcoming, even when a house has already arrived. "We're back. We brought tea." "Tea," the static breathed, but not ahead this time. After, like a toast proposed and accepted, Sarah placed a drawing pad on her lap, blank page ready. "No questions now," she whispered. "Just see." We sat. The radio filled the silence with a texture that didn't feel like filling. It was a presence. The way a cat is a presence by choosing a foot of your bed to make important. Every now and then, the static gathered itself into a vowel, then let the vowel go. The rain softened, then returned, the sort of weather that teaches you how many words for water you have. I thought of a patient on the record, the version of me the house could sing, and felt a small resolve like a coin placed firmly in a palm. "We'll speak only what we can carry," I repeated under my breath. "Carry," the radio said, a beat behind, as if making sure I heard my own command. "Thank you," I said. "Thank you. We didn't push." It's hard to describe how much work it is to not ask a haunted thing to do tricks for you. The trying makes its own warmth. I counted my breath without numbers. Inhale, the rise. Exhale, the place it falls. A pause where the ribs stay, as if waiting for instruction. Sarah's pencil moved sometimes, then stopped, then made a little fog where the graphite spread beneath her finger. The lullaby returned on its own. Not the whole thing. An edge, a button. Hum, hum, hum. It made my chest loosen. For a while, that was all. And then the room, as rooms do when they want to be kind, gave us a small, gentle proof. A hairpin lay on the floor beside the nightstand, its metal, old brass, dark, a tiny pearl head. I hadn't seen it before. There was dust on it, yes, but not enough. The radio static shortened, like someone taking a breath to show you a coin behind your ear. Sarah blinked and smiled with her eyes in a way that told a story she didn't need to speak. She had lost a hairpin on the stairs when we first came up, felt it slip, meant to look, forgot. And now here it was, returned, almost clean. Returned as if the house liked putting small things back where hands could find them again. "Thank you," she said, voices rounded the pearl. The static purred, no other word for it. I closed my eyes a second, because this is the part where a night writes your heart in pencil and asks if you want to go over it in ink. I saw the bathroom door from years ago. I felt the line my body made through the hall. I smelled the metal of the knob. I heard my voice losing its keys in its own pocket. "Be kind," I had said then. "Be kind." And the door did not answer in time. Not now. I told myself. Not like this. Speak only what you can carry. I'm going to ask something small, I said to the radio, to kindly, to the person I used to be. Would you tell us a word we can take downstairs? Something polite. The radio obliged without hurry. A vowel formed, then another. It built a simple gift. Listen, it said, after. With us, not ahead. Perfect, Sarah breathed. She wrote it on her drawing in tiny script. Listen, like a title chosen by the house. We rose, careful not to startle the air that had learned how to sit with us. The hallway greeted us with its honest creaks. Ty's voice flickered over comms. All clear. Back hall feels friendly. Jordan murmured something about the ledger. The page had flipped on its own, he thought. Maybe just a draft. But it had opened to a diagram that looked like a circle with a dot and smaller circles around it. Like an acoustic sketch, he said. Little listening posts. Leave it, I said. We're not building anything tonight. We gathered in the parlor to end the block where we began it. Alex framed us in a wider shot. Couches, horn, portrait. He asked me to close. I held the mug with both hands, though it was empty now. I wanted the posture. Thank you for staying with us, I said to the camera, to the kitchen, to the yard with sleeping clothespins. Tonight, we learned that repetition can be a form of caring if we choose it. That a house can return something small you thought you lost. That listening might be the only polite magic we're qualified to practice. Listen, said the radio, late enough to sound like a benediction. Alex nodded to the lens and let the light dim. He looked relieved and old in a handsome way. We did good, he said to the team, to the room. We weren't alone in hearing him. The drawer under the phonograph slid a whisper, then stilled, not open. Just a reminder, a promise of not now. The house could have made a demand. It didn't. It put one word back in my pocket, later. Tyler locked the front door like a man who wants a good night's sleep to feel earned. Jordan draped a sweater over the back of a chair as if saving the seat for morning. Sarah propped her drawing against a book so the room could see itself while we slept. Lights? Alex asked. I reached for the switch. The chandelier gave a tiny bell as if recalling our first hello and choosing to echo it now out of order, on purpose. We climbed the stairs in a companionable hush. No one spoke numbers. No one tested the chamber door. In my room, the radio's dial fainted from its glow to a thoughtful dusk. I turned the knob left, one notch, the smallest, and felt the hum ease, not off, just resting. Good night, I said. Good night, it said, behind me, not ahead. I lay down and listened for the house listening back, 2 rooms practicing the same word until it meant what we needed. If dreams came, they came like rain, steady, kind, insisting nothing was urgent. And when the hallway gave the smallest click, an old latch thinking of letting go, I did not bolt up. I smiled into the pillow and said, later, and the click swallowed itself, satisfied to have been heard. Chapter 5, The Night Practices. I woke to the radio breathing like a sleeping animal. There, then absent, then there again, as if the house were turning over and pulling the covers with it. For a few delicious seconds, I didn't know where I was, the way a body doesn't remember its own name in the first inch of morning. Then rain wrote itself on the window and brought the rest. The dial wasn't lit. The hum was memory only. I lay still and let my eyes adjust. The ivy on the wallpaper had become a darker ivy, the kind that grows after lamps. The balcony door looked as it had, latched, fogged. But I thought I saw a faint brightness lean against the glass the way a face might, curious and kind. A car drove nowhere on the road in my childhood. A gull announced that it had found the idea of a fish. The house listened. Floorboards murmured out in the hall. Not stealth, just someone rearranging their weight, the way you do when your thoughts are louder than you want them to be. I slid my feet to the rug, found a robe I'd thrown over the chair, and shrugged it on. I didn't turn on a light. Some nights prefer to be left to their moon. Out in the hall, the air tasted faintly of cinnamon and old metal. I paused, and the pause returned itself, a perfectly timed echo of pause, as though the hallway had learned manners. At the far end, near the stair, a low ribbon of light fell across the runner. Alex had the camera lamp on, dialed down to a whisper. I followed it the way you follow a candle for company, not illumination. He stood halfway down. One hip leaned against the banister. The lens pointed toward the slightly open door of Tyler's room. He wasn't recording. He was just standing with the camera the way some people hold a book when they can't read yet, but want to stay near language. "Can't sleep?" I said low. He twitched, not startled so much as reminded. Then he tilted the lamp toward the floor so the light made us conspirators. "Ty's talking," he whispered. "Not snoring talking. It sounds like drills, like counting but not numbers." "I warned you about numbers," I said, and he smiled at that, grateful to be scolded by a familiar script. We stood outside Tyler's door and listened the polite way. Ears closed, body far, no hand on the hardware. His voice came soft and steady, the voice of a man doing something he's done too many times to waste adjectives on it. Here, there, pace, reset. Here, there. Not words to tally with, paces to hold, a coach's ghost inside its mouth, or just a body trying to keep itself between lanes. Every now and then the hallway tried the line a half-breath ahead. Here, and then let Tyler catch up to himself without arguing. "Should we wake him?" Alex asked. "Do you?" I said. "Like to be woken when your brain is solving without you?" "No," he admitted. "I like to be moved to the couch and told I did a good job, even if I haven't." "Then let him pace his bed in sleep." I glanced at the door and felt the sense that maybe the house had already tucked the blankets under his feet so he wouldn't trip on his own edges. The stair gave a companionable creak. Jordan appeared, hair a soft silhouette, hoodie ghosted with lamplight. He carried a small recorder and nothing else, as if the tool was enough to count as pajamas. "You heard it too," he whispered. His smile was the sheepish one he wears when he tries to pretend the adrenaline is caffeine. "Tyler's running relays in a dream," Alex murmured. "No numbers, though. We're proud." Jordan nodded and made a thoughtful face at the recorder, like he wanted to ask it what it had learned. "I couldn't sleep," he said. "Kitchen clock ticks weird, like it drags time on the half-beat. I thought I'd see if the ledger turned another page." "It will if it wants you to see something," I said. "Don't ask it to do tricks." "Promise," he said, and pointed the recorder at his own chest. "Promise," the device would have on file later, his voice overlaid with a hallway who liked that he'd named the rule. We drifted toward the back hall together, not because we meant to investigate exactly, but because the quiet was moving that way. Sarah's door opened as we passed. She stepped out barefoot, hair loose, the kind of sleepy beautiful that comes from being deeply unafraid of anyone's gaze at the exact wrong hour. Her charcoal-smeared fingers pinched a tissue. "Couldn't land," she said, apologizing to the night for her wakefulness. "Stay with us," I said. "We're only going to look at a book that sometimes thinks it's a sea." The back hallway greeted us like a cat who decided we were trustworthy. The family photos looked kindly ridiculous in the low light. Stiff collars, nervous eyes, the same hand arranging bow ties over and over across decades. The empty frames did not look empty. They looked like savings accounts. The ledger waited on the table, open where Jordan had left it on the acoustic sketch. But now another page lay mostly over it, the corner folded like a school child marking a favorite paragraph. Jordan checked our faces, "May I?" and saw no objection. He lifted the new page. The sketch underneath had been drawn darker while we were away. Same circle, same dot in the center, same small satellites around. But a line had been added from the center dot to one of the small circles, and the small circle had been shaded with tiny cross-hatching, meticulous patience. "That's us," Sarah whispered, as if admitting to a tender crime. "Center is the chamber. The small one is your room, Mia, or the parlor, one of the friendly places." "Friendly," Alex repeated, testing the word for squeamish echo. Nothing in the house objected. He tilted the lamp off the page to let the pencil work stand on its own. "We are not drawing the rest," he added to the air, like a promise sealed and mailed. A line of cool moved past our ankles, not a draft. A motion like someone gentle going by without asking us for room because they already knew we'd give it. The vent in the baseboard murmured a vowel. Kindly's voice arrived like a hand on a shoulder you forgot you wanted. "Awake?" she asked, not ahead and not after, but with. "We are," I said. "We are," the hallway agreed, proud to be counted without numbers. "Do you need anything?" Sarah asked, her voice designed for rooms. Kindly took her time. We heard the kitchen's old clock tick, the rain choose a new tempo, the tiny scratch of Jordan's thumbnail worry at a recorder sticker. Then, "Mind the door," she said, and the word door carried two meanings, neither of them panicked. "The chamber," Alex guessed, soft. "We will." "And ours," I added. "We'll mind the doors of our mouths." The vent hummed, happy with wordplay. The ledger's corner let go of its fold and lay flat as if smoothing a blanket. Tyler's voice in sleep down the hall adjusted its cadence. Here, there, reset. The last word softened. Reset became rest, and then unspooled to breath. Jordan exhaled a smile. "This is the nicest haunting," he said to his recorder, to his future self, to any version of him tempted to make it bigger than it was. And I don't mean nice like boring. I mean considerate, which may be the only kind I can sleep in. "Let's try," I said. "Everyone okay sharing a room? Just for an hour." It wasn't fear. It was the desire to lend our breathing to one another so the house didn't have to hold quite so much. We chose the parlor because it had already witnessed our most ambitious kindnesses. We didn't bring blankets, we brought selves. Sarah curled on one green couch and draped an arm over her eyes. Jordan took the floor with a cushion, and the recorder turned facing up like a small, patient lily. Alex sat upright, back against the bookshelves, camera beside him but off, hand over the lens as if forehead to forehead. I took the armchair near the phonograph. The drawer with the records remained closed. I felt the dignity of that restraint like a weight lifted from my own chest. The portrait of Dr. Sorrel stayed inscrutable. I tried to find a mercy in the painter's attention, and after a minute I did. There, in a delicate smudge of shadow under the cheekbone, a hint that even confident men are made soft by light. We didn't talk. Sometimes you earn your silence by having spoken well. The house understood. A pipe settled 3 rooms away and did not echo itself. The radio upstairs turned once in its sleep and did not call out. The vent practiced the word okay so quietly it could have been our breath misheard. I must have slept because I dreamed the ocean was a turntable and the moon was the needle and every wave was a love song played a fraction off speed, familiar and better for it. When I opened my eyes, the lamp had not moved, but the stack of shellac had. One sleeve lay on the low table beside the phonograph, not on top, not under, beside, offered, like a slice of cake left near a teacup so you could refuse without offense. I met Alex's eyes. He was awake because he rarely allows himself anything as fragile as sleep in a place that might ask him to be the oldest child. He raised his eyebrows in the question we'd been asking all night. Now? And I shook my head. Later. He nodded and let his hand rest heavier over the camera lens as though warming an animal that might startle. The sleeve's label was blank. That felt right. Not a trap. Not a dare. A reminder that not everything needs a title to be true. Thank you, I whispered, to the room that had returned small things and held back large ones. We'll be better guests tomorrow. Tomorrow, the vent breathed after me, the way a friend repeats your plan so you'll believe you have one. We dozed and woke and dozed again until the rain softened into that morning kind that smells like bread. Somewhere near dawn, the chandelier gave a tiny chime as a draft discovered it again. It didn't sound like hello anymore. It sounded like a see you in the kitchen. We stood together without needing to plan it. Sarah stretched. A cat remembered. Jordan shook pins and needles from his foot and grinned at the recorder as if it had sang him to sleep. Alex rotated his neck and winced like a confession. We left the parlor tidy, the blank sleeve still on the table, the camera lens warm, the portrait watched, but not obeyed. On the stairs, Tyler's door opened. He stepped out with hair that had learned about pillows and a face a little younger than last night's. "We doing sunrise tea?" he asked, as if that had been the plan all along. "We are," Alex said, "and I'm not filming anyone until sugar has been applied." Tyler looked relieved in a way that had nothing to do with cameras. "Good," he said. He rubbed his chest like he'd been carrying a heavy jersey and found it folded at the foot of his bed instead. "I had the weirdest dream," he added, and then amended, "Not bad, just like a track where the lane lines moved to meet me so I didn't have to." "You were heard," I said, glad to pay him that debt. He nodded, accepted the gift without asking for its receipt. We walked to the kitchen in a line that felt like a tradition rehearsing itself. The fog had thinned a little. The yard's clothespins woke like birds with places to be. Someone, kindly the house a draft, had set the kettle on the back burner, not lit, just placed. It's a small thing to be told. You will want warmth soon. I can't make it for you, but I can put the pot where your hand will find it. We filled it. We waited. We gave the morning our small metal song. Chapter 6. Morning has good manners. Mornings in old houses arrive like courteous guests. Soft knock, a pause, then the smell of toast, even when no bread exists. The fog outside had thinned into long ribbons the sun could not be bothered to cut. The kettle's whistle was less a cry than a suggestion. We poured. The cups warmed our hands into believing we were clever for waking early. "Ground rules still hold," Alex said, eyes less red than they deserved to be. He had the camera, but wore it diagonally across his back like a messenger bag, not a weapon. "No basement, no chamber door, no names. We don't ask for tricks. Daylight is for listening, not proving." "Listener's choice," Jordan added, grinning at his own joke. He leaned an elbow on the counter and pushed his glasses up with a knuckle. "I want a daylight loop. Signal sweep. Just to map where Kindly likes to sit. Like where the house breathes easiest." "Walk slow," I said. "If we rush, the house will think it has to keep up." Sarah unrolled a small cloth bundle and revealed pencils, one fine-tipped pen, and a white eraser, like a small lozenge. "I'll do thresholds," she said. "Doorways, window frames, places where the inside thinks about the outside." Tyler took a mug with the chipped lip on purpose, like a ritual. "I'll do doors," he volunteered. "Not opening, standing near, listening, like a bouncer, but polite." We laughed in the way morning lets you. No edge. The ledger waited for us in the back hall with the patience of furniture. The family photos looked like 100 quiet alarms that had decided to be clocks instead. We didn't go live. Even Alex let that sit. The audience had stayed with us through breathing. They could survive a breakfast without content. Besides, the red light would have made the air wear shoes, and I liked the way it padded round in socks. The parlor in daylight felt like a friend who looks better without makeup because you can tell where the bones live. Dust lay comfortably, not ashamed of itself. The portrait's varnish had yellowed almost to honey. The blank-labeled record sleeve on the low table had not moved. If anything, it seemed to have become part of the table's posture, a small shoulder to lean on. "May I borrow this?" Sarah asked the room, pointing to the sleeve. The phonograph answered with a hum that might have been wood remembering music. She took that as yes, and slipped the sleeve beneath her sketchbook to stiffen the page. "Thank you," she told the old cardboard, because sometimes gratitude is a conversation with things. I went upstairs for my notebook, the wire-bound one I keep for sessions when handwriting is kinder than a screen. On the way back, I paused by the chamber door without meaning to. In daylight, the paint's river delta cracks seemed less dramatic, more like a map of veins under skin. The brass knob wore fingerprints from another century, the way old hands wear rings they can't get off. I stood with it like you stand with a neighbor you only wave to. "Well, mind you," I said. "Mind." The vent below murmured, the sound of a tiny fan turning in air that didn't need it. Downstairs again, we found a new room by not looking for it. Past the dining room, a narrow passage opened to what had been an office. Not the staged kind with mahogany and stern diplomas. This one had a desk scarred by ink, a swivel chair that had learned patience, and shelves crowded with the quiet hoard of a working life. Boxes of index cards, a bottle of dried gum arabic, a tin of paper clips shaped like letters. On a desk sat a dictation machine the color of old toast, its reels an empty infinity, and beside it a wire-bound notebook with a blue cover worn to gray. Jordan breathed like he'd found a puzzle he could love without solving. "This is new," he said, eyes shining. "I mean old, new to us." Alex didn't reach first. He waited for me to touch the notebook, which is either superstition or manners or both. I opened to the middle, where notebooks become honest. The handwriting wasn't the doctor's neat slant from the ledger. This was someone later, a caretaker or a student, all quick loops and practical margins. Notes on repairs. Notes on dates when windows sang. Notes on auditory anticipations in East Hall. Recommend felt pads on doorstops. And on 3 separate pages, as if rewritten to make a point stick, mind a door. Same phrase, Sarah said, peering. 3 times. Not a warning, a reminder. I turned a page and found a sketch of the house's first floor. Rectangles for rooms, a circle for the parlor carpet, arrows showing the way sound might. Choose to slip along plaster seams. In an office corner, a little star and the word, listen. See? Jordan said, delighted. A listening post. They made their own radio of the house. Analog networking. Let's not plug anything in, I said. We don't need to wake what doesn't want coffee. Tyler tested the office door's swing, a gentle push. It didn't quite close. Wood had swollen with years. He let it stay ajar the width of a phrase and planted himself there, hands in hoodie pockets. The human version of a stopper that doesn't fuss. We sat, me at the desk, Sarah on the low-file cabinet, Jordan on the floor with his back to the wall, Alex standing in the corner where light made a triangle, camera unused but ready. The room enjoyed being full. Old rooms always do. They were built for the fuss of people. I turned to a page in my notebook and wrote, carefully, like you do when you're building a voice you trust with your own sleep. What do you need this morning? I set the notebook on the desk, angled toward the dictation machine like a microphone to a choir. It wasn't a trick. It was an offering. We waited. Nothing theatrically moved. The dictation reels did not spin. The house is not a stage magician. It's a good teacher. A mild, bright coolness lifted from the baseboard, the sensation of air that has remembered how to round corners without chipping paint. Kindly's voice arrived like a clear spoon tapping porcelain. Mind, she said. Then, a breath later, listen. We are, Alex murmured, almost embarrassed by the sincerity of the sentence. The dictation machine answered with a soft click, the kind old plastic makes in summer. My notebook's paper corner lifted in the faintest draft and settled again. Sarah's pencil rolled an inch and politely stopped at the edge of the wire binding. The office did the exact amount of theater required to feel seen. A thought I'd been avoiding loitered in the doorway of my throat. The records in the parlor, the ledger's circles, the caretaker's notebook, each was a form of speech that chose its floorboards. The chamber, by contrast, was built to hold the unsayable until it echoed. What if Kindly's reminder wasn't about barring us from the chamber, but about the other door, the one in the mouth that opens too easily when someone asks, "Tell me everything?" I wrote beneath my question, "We will not teach the walls sentences we can't bear to hear back." The pen made a small satisfied hiss. Kindly hummed, affirming. The office's single window flickered with a brighter kind of gray as the fog thinned another measure. I could see the hint of a hedge, the ghost of a path leading somewhere the lawn remembered. "Garden," Sarah said, following my eyes. "Daylight is for outside," I agreed. "We can let the house air out." We left the notebook open to our promise. The dictation machine watched us go like a dog that knows you are coming back. Down the short steps off the kitchen, the yard received us with wet grass and the sort of moss that forgives any shoe. The clothesline creaked once, then decided morning could hold itself up. Beyond the fence, a footpath stitched toward a copse of spruce. Fog wrapped the trunks in delicate scarves. The sea showed itself only in breath, not body. Tyler led not because we named him leader, but because he walked like paths trusted him. We followed at a pace that taught our ribs a new reason to move. The garden had been practical once. Rows, a collapsed lattice, the black metal bones of a bench. A small hutch near the back held glazed pots and a trowel that had survived 4 owners. Wind chimes made of thin shells hung under the hutch roof. They moved as if remembering instructions. Touch, pause, answer. "Do you hear it?" Sarah asked, soft. The shells chimed a single note and waited. "Listen," I said, and the chimes answered with a second that belonged with the first. Jordan crouched, fingertips to a half-buried ceramic marker. P.I. The rest had flaked away. He brushed dirt aside with a reverence I'd seen him give to code he didn't write. "Someone loved their quiet," he said. Alex breathed in a filmmaker's long inhale, the kind that saves the shot for later. He still didn't lift the camera. The restraint looked good on him. He pointed with his chin to a small gate at the far end of the hedge. It had a latch you could open with 2 fingers or a good breeze. On the other side, a narrow track fell toward the bluff, then curled left into a notch in the hill. "Not far," he said. "Just there," Tyler agreed. We stopped at the gate and listened. The sea breathed like a singer between verses. A gull practiced a laugh and gave up halfway. Somewhere behind us at the house, a window thought about closing and decided against it. Kindly's voice, you could call it that now without stealing, slid into the open like fog through a scarf. "Later, later," I echoed, suddenly grateful for the leash of that word. It meant, not never, not now, the exact length of patience the day required. We walked back the long way on purpose, past the little bench so our bodies could learn its dimensions, around the hutch so the chimes could memorize our steps, through the low brush where the path bent and straightened. By the time we reached the kitchen door, our shoes were politely wet, and our breaths looked like we'd been laughing, even if we hadn't. Inside, the office seemed pleased to see us return. The notebook lay where we left it, and on a line beneath my promise, 3 small words had appeared, not in a new hand, in mine. The pressure the same, the spacing my own, the way I loop my why when I'm trying to be precise. "We heard you." "Okay," Alex said. The word "a prayer in a sweater." "We schedule a midday live. We keep it short. We don't test. We invite." Jordan tapped his recorder like you'd tap a lucky coin. "I can do a spectral map without beeps," he said. "Just a slowly moving ear. Give people the sense of where to lean." "Thresholds," Sarah said, hugging her sketchbook. "Doorways. I'll title each drawing Listen and date them like you date bread." Tyler was at the back hall again, close to the chamber door but not crowding it. He looked taller in daylight. "I'll stay here," he said, like he'd been assigned the easy one and wanted to do it perfectly. "Mind the door." The vent exhaled approval, a gentle broom over old dust. The parlor chimed once, renegade crystal, greeting noon. The house, having been treated like a person with better hearing than ours, answered in its language, a timing that wasn't ahead now, not after, but with. And just as Alex reached for the camera strap, Just as we named the time with no numbers at all, a small echo, kind, almost shy, arrived from the ceiling of the office and set itself gently a half-breath before my next inhale. Later, it said, and we all smiled because we had meant it. Chapter 7. Threshold Work. We set the house like a table. Jordan tuned his little recorder to its quietest setting and clipped a foam windscreen over the mic. Not because there was wind, but because he liked the way it taught breath to dress nicely. Sarah taped small slips of paper beside door frames, "Listen," in tidy script, and tucked a second slip under the leg of the wobbly lamp so it would remember its purpose. Tyler stood his post within arm's length of the chamber door, not touching, hands in hoodie pockets, a look on his face like he'd finally been given the drill he knew how to run. Alex wore the camera again, low, the strap soft, with years. He did the thing he'd promised himself he would do. He asked the house out loud if it felt okay to be seen in daylight. The office answered with a polite crack from the bookcase. It is remarkable how kind wood can be when it's allowed to sound like wood. We went live. "Good noon," Alex said, the words an inside joke with our night. "This will be a short listen. We're moving through thresholds while the house is awake. No tests. If you're with us, soften your shoulders and hear the quiet on your end, too. Let's see where sound likes to sit." He panned slowly. Desk, dictation machine, notebook left open on the line. We heard you. The chat, muted on our side, rose like tied numbers without numbers. Jordan started his drift, the recorder held at chest height, the way some people carry flowers. We learned quickly that thresholds were the house's favorite instrument. Doorways gave back the slightest, kindest anticipations, as if they were practicing our next step, so we wouldn't have to worry about it. In the office doorway, the house gave the S of listen a fraction early, like a page turned by a breeze. In the kitchen doorway, you could hear water decide to be water on the other side. A pipe. Thinking yes, the kettle allowing itself a quiet answer. Sarah sketched arches and lintels. Negative space darkened with soft graphite until the open part seemed brighter by comparison. "Back hall," Jordan murmured, "for the record. Chamber door on the right. Tyler on watch." Tyler didn't look at the lens. He nodded to it as if it were a neighbor's dog and said, almost under his breath, "We're good." The vent below supplied a feathered echo. "Good." And stopped, content, like a teacher satisfied with a student's calm. We avoided the basement, because a promise is a floor you shouldn't test with a jump. We took the auditorium of the dining room and let our footsteps be the only applause. We passed the parlor, where the blank record sleeve still leaned on the low table like a note we hadn't read yet. We paused on the second stair, where the riser had a habit of answering hello. Today, it chose to say nothing at all, which felt like a compliment. Upstairs, my radio was awake, but not eager. Its dial wore a quiet glow like the edge of a saucer. Sarah placed a listen slip on the nightstand and smiled at the way the brass echo plate winked in approval. We didn't ask it to hum. It gave us one sky-blue syllable anyway, a vowel that warmed the room by the amount a good memory does. "Office again," Alex said after 15 minutes. Longer, shorter. Time had learned we were minding it. "We'll close where we opened." Back at the desk, daylight pooled in a rectangle across the blotter. The dictation machine did not misbehave. The wire-bound caretaker's notebook lay open as we'd left it, and yet Jordan glanced down first, then looked at me, the way you check if someone else sees a star you hope isn't a plane. A sentence had joined the page, tucked neatly beneath, "We heard you." Same hand as before, mine, which is to say not mine, which is to say the house had borrowed my cadence and returned it like a kindness. Thank you for the morning. I felt something settle in me, the way a tray finally finds the table. Alex didn't push in. He set the camera on the desk, lensed toward the room, and let the shot be what it was. "We're going to close the live here," he said, voice steady. "We'll spend some off-camera hours keeping the house company, because sometimes listening doesn't need an audience. If you're with us later, be patient and be kind. To your own rooms first." He cut the feed. The parlor sighed as if a corset had been unlaced. I hadn't realized how much the red light asked of my posture. My shoulders came down to a degree I didn't know they had to fall. "We should eat," Sarah said, the most sensible thing said all day. We executed sandwiches with the solemn joy of campers. The kitchen agreed with mayo. The sun found a sheet of tin outside and used it to paint light on the ceiling. Tyler took the chair by the back door where the yard could see him, and the yard did. A sparrow landed on the fence and congratulated us on existing. After lunch, the weather made a decision. The fog thinned to pearl, the sky considered blue, and chose a subtle one. The house adjusted its chorus for afternoon. Fewer pipe opinions, more window talk. The portrait of Dr. Sorrell grew less stern as varnish brightened. Even his careful mouth seemed to say softly, "Well then, we dispersed as you do in good company." Jordan took the office and its diagram and invented a game where he listened for the gentlest echo, and then moved a pencil eraser 1 inch toward it each time it arrived. Sarah camped in the parlor and made threshold drawings like benedictions. Tyler rotated his post and practiced a drill no one taught him. 5 breaths facing the chamber door, 5 with his shoulder to it, 5 with his back. Each said a vow to keep his body soft. Alex finally allowed himself to capture daylight. The far wall's shallow cracks like a delt from above. The way a mop thread in a bucket made a private comet tail. The exact pitch of a spoon settling in a cup. I took the garden because the chimes had been asking me polite questions all morning. Where did you learn that word? Who showed you how to hold a door with your hip? And I wanted to answer without weighing down rooms that had done so much lifting. On the bench under the hutch roof, sound was the right temperature. I pulled my notebook and drew a line down the middle like a well digger. Left column, the small phrases I owed the house. Right column, the ones I could keep for myself until later, was earned. Thank you. For the morning went left. I missed the voice that taught me to be kind, stayed right. I don't know how long I sat. Long enough for the chimes to change their mind twice. Not long enough to memorize their grammar. The garden did what gardens do. Reminded me I was temporary and welcome. When I stood, there was a small addition on my page, penciled faintly in the corner, the handwriting, no one's and everyone's. A teacher's chalk. Take water. I looked up. The kitchen window stood half open, just enough for air to pass. Inside, a glass sat near the sink, beads of condensation catching sun like salt. Kindly had not poured it. Kindly had suggested the correct verb, and I exercised it. The water answered my mouth the way a well answers a rope with a bucket at the end. Glad to have been asked. Afternoon's slower hour came, the one that makes rooms smell briefly of paper and wood even when you don't own any books. Jordan appeared with a proud smile and ink on his hand. "I think the strong echoes draw toward the office right before they go quiet," he reported, like a tide coming back to check the dock. "Not predictive, just a route they like." "Routine is kindness," I said. "For people and ghosts." Tyler, easing his shoulders, joined us. "Door's content," he announced. "I didn't mind it. It minded me. We're even." "Parlor's happy," Sarah said, tucking a charcoal back into its roll. "Also, I drew a tiny moth above the phonograph horn, and the house didn't erase it. So either it approves of whimsy, or it's saving up a veto for a more important decision." Alex wandered in last from his tour like a parent arriving from errands that were mostly driving and noticing. "We're in good shape," he said. "Even Dr. Sorrell has softened. I think he likes the camera, but doesn't want to admit it." He leaned a hip on the counter and looked at each of us the way you look at people in daylight who you'd trust in the dark. "We can take a late afternoon rest, then one more short live at dusk," he suggested. "A thank you and a good night plan. Same rules." "Later," the office ceiling offered, cheerful, and we laughed because the house had learned running jokes, and that's the best threshold of all. We rested, but not the kind with eyes closed. The kind where you lower your voice and let it find a new register. I went to my room and wrote a small letter I would never mail to someone who wasn't here. I kept it bland and loving because the walls are excellent archivists. When I finished, the radio let out one easy breath. No syllables, just the feeling a well has after a rope comes up empty. Relief, not loss. Dusk arrived on schedule without us saying the numbers. The sky went lavender to slate. The chimes decided to be quiet, so the moths could have their hour. We gathered in the parlor. The blank sleeve still leaned on the table, patient, not pressuring. Sarah's listening slips glowed pale in the doorway light like small bedside notes. "Drink water. Call if you wake. Be where your feet are." We went live for 10 minutes. Just thanks. Just the day as a container. Alex's voice wore its best sweater. Jordan's recorder showed the invisible spine of the room. Sarah held up 2 of her threshold sketches, thresholds holding. Tyler waved once, tiny, the kind of gesture that means more because it knows it could mean less. "We'll close the stream here," Alex said, "and give the house a quiet evening. Tomorrow, maybe the yard again, maybe the path to the hedge. But for now, good night," said the chandelier, a single polite bell. We smiled into the lens and ended the broadcast. The red light went to sleep without a fuss. The house did not immediately perform. It basked. So did we. "Dinner?" Sarah asked. "Soup," Tyler said, as if he'd been waiting all day to be the one to decide soup. We found canned tomato and dry basil in a pot that forgave new hands. The stove clicked until flame admitted it had always intended to arrive. While it warmed, I drifted to the back hall out of habit and stood near Tyler's post. The chamber door looked exactly as it had that morning and forever. Mapped paint. Brass worn to velvet. I didn't touch it. I breathed by it, a neighbor on a porch at the same sunset. I meant to stay 1 minute. I stayed 3 breaths. In that 3rd breath, not ahead of me and not after, a voice leaned through the door the way mist leans through hedges. Kindly, but not kindly alone. A new voice braided with hers. Hoarser, as if unused, a throat that had waited a long time to trust air. "Thank you," they said together. Then, distinct, the second voice. "Mind the morning. A good warning. Not sharp. No teeth. The way you tell someone the tide changes early, and isn't that wonderful? And please don't put your picnic blanket too close to the rack line." "I will," I said. "We will." We returned to soup and spoons and the ordinary holiness of bowls. We ate like people who planned to sleep and let rooms keep their stories for themselves a while. When the house settled around midnight, there, I almost said the number, the settling had a cadence I recognized from lullabies. It hummed so we wouldn't have to, and just before I closed my eyes, just as the radio softened its lamp, the yard's chimes tapped twice. Not alarm. Appointment. Later, they seem to say. Morning has something it wants to show you. Chapter 8. The House. Points. The morning introduced itself with the kind of light that learns your name before you open your eyes. The radio breathed once, permission granted, not summons, and went still. I lay there long enough to feel my face settle into daytime. Somewhere on the roof a gull negotiated with its echo and lost politely. "Mind the morning," the voice had said. So I did. I listened for what morning minds, water in pipes, heat fussing in registers, a carpenter bee proposing renovations to a windowsill, our bodies remembering how to be kind to each other before coffee. I dressed for outside, sweater that forgave damp, boots that liked moss, and padded into the hallway. Tyler's door is open, his bed made with the workmanship of someone who knows they sleep better if they tidy the air. Sarah stood by the top of the stairs with her sketchbook against her hip, eyes the exact color of the fog. Jordan's hoodie hood was up like a monk's, his recorder clipped and quiet. Alex came last with the camera in one hand and the other empty on purpose. "Breakfast after," he said, a bargaining chip for whatever the house wanted to show us. "After," I agreed. The back door lifted its latch with the courteous shrug of old metal, and the yard accepted us like rain that had learned to be people. The fog lay in strips, the chimes under the hutch tapped the exact rhythm of a heart meeting a hill. The path beyond the hedge looked less like a rumor, more like an invitation. It occurred to me that an invitation is still a door. I could mind it and step through. We paused at the gate the way you stand at a friend's doorstep and decide which part of your face to lead with. Gulls announced a debate at sea. The smell of salt arrived with lemon honesty. The latch lifted with 2 fingers and a wordless permission from the air. "Slow," I said, though no one needed telling. The path slid down toward the bluff, then veered left into a notch where spruce held their breath and listened to each other age. Ferns made lace underfoot. My boots learned a gave of last year's needles. Jordan walked a few steps behind me, recorder in hand, head slightly tilted. Not hunting, just curious. Sarah kept pace at my shoulder, her pencil tucked in her sleeve like a wand she refused to wave. Tyler ranged a little ahead, not to scout, but to let the path know we were earnest. The sea appeared suddenly between trunks, flat pewter, a skater's perfect rink, before the wind stirred it and brushed the surface into small shivers. At the bluff's edge, the path widened to a lookout made of careful decisions. Someone had laid stones once, not a wall so much as a place to understand where to stop. The cliff dropped to a scrap of beach strewn with kelp and polite driftwood. Waves walked up and reconsidered. Sarah pointed with her chin. There. At first I saw only the obvious, a fallen branch shaped like a question mark, a bright scrap of rope. The tide had retired. Then the quiet stubbornness of the scene arranged itself, a weathered post near the edge with a metal loop set into it, and beside that a narrow box nailed to a stake, the kind hikers used to leave notes for strangers with the same map. A rain-swollen lid protected a sheaf of damp, patient paper. "Mind the morning," the new voice had said. The morning, it seemed, minded a ledger of its own. Tyler reached the box first and stepped aside. "You," he said, nodding to me, which felt like a compliment and a dare's gentler cousin. I lifted the lid and breathed out to steady my hands. Inside lay a pencil stub with a length of string and pages that had become soft as cloth from being thumbed in weather. The top page wore a handful of names in steady, careful hand, the sort of script that comes from writing with gloves in a pocket. Not the patients, not the doctor. Visitors, hikers, neighbors. A note dated a spring 2 decades ago. First wildflowers on the south slope. Another winter. Storm took the small fir. No one heard. Several entries with only one word. Listen. Below those, newer pages. One line that could have been yesterday. Kindly voice on the bluff. Sounds like a shell at the ear. Another. Mind the chamber door. Mind the cliff. The ink had bled into the fibers in small halos, each word fetched by rain and returned in a softened shape. "May I?" Sarah asked, and I handed her the pencil. She wrote slowly, letter-pressing the paper so future fingers would find a relief there even if the graphite washed. "Thank you for the morning." We stood on the lookout and let the air carry that sentence in its teeth. The sea's talk came up as if amused to be named a witness. A few paces away, the metal loop set into the post made a sound. Tiny ping, cooling pan, though no one had touched it. Jordan angled the recorder that way and did exactly nothing else. Tyler glanced at the drop and stepped back 2 inches, the kind of adjustment that leaves a body proud instead of scolded. "What's the loop for?" Alex asked, then shook his head. "No, don't tell me yet. Let me guess intention. Tie off for the old rope path when the stairs washed out. Or a bell once, maybe, to warn boats. Or just something to keep your hand busy while you looked at the sea and practiced not saying what you came here to say." "Good intentions," I said. "Let's not test them." We didn't. We listened. The bluff made its own weather in miniature, wind lifting heat off rock, salt crystallizing into something almost tasteable. The house was a presence even here, a pressure behind us, not jealous, simply wishing to be included. Kindly came with the smallest of contrasts, a hush under the wind, the subtraction you feel when a word is withheld. "Here," she said with us, not anticipating. Then, in that hoarser companion voice we'd met at the chamber door, "Remember?" "What should we remember?" Jordan asked, voice dropped to the range that doesn't scare birds. "Steps," the hoarser voice said, and I felt my spine line itself like a set of volumes arranged in height order. "Not counts. Wait, where you put it." Tyler nodded once, eyes on the stones at our toes. "I can do that," he said, and he could. He shifted his center over each foot the way a runner memorizes curves. Step, settle, step, settle. 0 numbers, all body. "Thank you," I said to the morning, which is the same as saying thank you to the safest available God. We lingered then turned back before the sea could get ideas about being dramatic. On the path up, we let our voices be the only rehearsals. A hum, a phrase, a name said as if tasting how it sits in a mouth. When the yard swallowed us again, the chimes answered with a chord they hadn't tried before. Two shells arguing in harmony. Inside, the kitchen felt like a room that had watched us from the window and decided we deserved toast. We obliged. Butter repeated itself in small, sincere ways. Alex, who loves nothing more than filming things that cannot possibly be content, filmed the sound of the knife sliding over crust and nearly cried from joy and fatigue. We agreed to keep mourning off air, a secret held between our throats and the pages at the bluff. Not everything is better for being shared. The rest of the morning was ordinary in the comforting sense. Sarah worked a series of tiny threshold drawings and labeled each with a single word the house had returned. Listen, later, mind. Jordan mapped quiet routes between rooms and declared what he called no echo lanes, where you could walk without bumping into your own mouth. Tyler found a broom, of all things, and asked the hall if it minded him sweeping. It didn't. The soft rasp of straw on runner made the kind of sound that reminds a building why it agreed to be a building. The vent said, "Thank you," in a small, clean sigh. In the office, I returned to the caretaker's notebook. The page we'd left open had dried where our breath had landed. I turned it slowly. A few pages on, past diagrams and notes about window weights and doorstop pads, a letter, unsent, in the same quick hand. To whomever keeps the morning here, leave the garden gate cracked. We find our way by common kindnesses. A sketch of the gate latch followed, its shape graceful in a way no hardware catalog admits. I wrote beneath it, because sometimes answers should live next to the questions they solve. We left it cracked. Thank you for the path. The dictation machine made a small throat clearing at that, not mechanical so much as pleased that we had given the page a partner. From the ceiling, in a seam that had collected a century's patience, the hoarse voice tried a new sentence and made it to the end. Good work. We have no saints for houses. We should. Toward late morning, the parlor reminded us of the record we had not played, the blank labeled one offered like an extra chair. It hadn't moved. It had become decor. I placed a fingertip on a cardboard and felt nothing dramatic. A temperature the same as a table, a memory of being looked at and admired for restraint. Alex saw me see it and raised his eyebrows. Not a push. I'll follow your lead. Later, I said, smiling, and we both laughed at how this word had become our best leash and best bridge. We ate again, soup's cousin made of eggs and embarrassment, and argued tenderly about which room got the nicest light at noon. Then the house asked for another kind of noticing. It came from the back hall in the form of a door, trying to remember if it was supposed to be closed or open. The chamber. Tyler was there quickly. His body knew before the rest of him did. He didn't touch the knob. He put his palm an inch from it like a man warming his hands over a candle. The brass held a cool you could trust. He breathed 5 with his shoulder to it, 5 with his back, 5 facing, the drill that had taught him how to be soft in front of a problem. From inside the door, nothing. No hiss, no plea. From the ceiling seam, Kindly's measured patience. From the seam beside it, the hoarse voice testing her weight on a different floorboard. Mind the morning, she said again, but not as a new warning, as a gold star placed in a margin. "We did," I answered. "We will." The vent released a sound like folded paper, smoothing under a palm. Jordan leaned against the opposite wall and tilted his recorder away so the chamber could have a private minute with our praise. Sarah drew the doorway itself. Just the negative space left the door an absence, shaded the air where voices have to pass to learn to be gentle. Alex filmed our backs. That's all. The soft posture of 4 people practicing bows for a room that doesn't ask for them and deserves them anyway. Noontide moved on. The house sank into the kind of quiet that makes a nap feel like kindness, not avoidance. We let ourselves do the human equivalent of tucking in, blinds not fully closed, shoes lined up with their minds toward the door, kettle refilled to please our future. The radio in my room clicked, not on, just the way a friend taps your elbow to say, "I'm here if you wake." When I lay down, I put the caretaker's phrase where my breath could hold it. Leave the garden gate cracked. Sleep came without convincing. In the half-dream before falling, I felt the house listening to my breaths and not getting ahead of them. And I thought, with a gratitude that felt almost like prayer, this is how you keep a place from repeating your worst sentence, by filling it with better ones until it prefers those. Somewhere downstairs, a hinge practiced a courteous answer. The parlor chimed once on the quarter hour we had not named. The sea sent a brief, amused shrug up the bluff. And in that sweet seam of afternoon before everything remembers its later, the house said, all voices together, no anticipation at all. Good. Chapter 9. Noon. Drift. Naps inside old houses feel like pages turned by a careful hand. I woke to the radio's small throat clear, the way a polite friend announces they're in the kitchen and will not surprise you. Sunlight parceled itself into tidy rectangles on the floorboards, bright enough to warm a stripe on my ankle. The air wore the warmth of bread left near a window. Down the hall, someone laughed once. Jordan, a soft snort like a punctuation mark, added to a good line, and then didn't laugh again, as if he'd filed the joy in a cabinet labeled "For Later." I sat up, touched the brass plate on the radio, Echo, engraved like a patient instruction, and said, "Thank you for letting me rest." "Rest," it answered, after me like a signature. In the parlor, the blank labeled record sleeve had shifted a polite inch toward the phonograph. Not presumptive, only stretching its legs. Sarah sat cross-legged on the rug, a charcoal smudge on her cheek that worked as well as a smile. She had set out a short row of small drawings against the low table, doorways and window mouths, each labeled in her neat hand. Listen, mind, later, good. They looked like flashcards, Jordan said from the couch, chin on the back cushion, recorder balanced on his forearm, like we're teaching the house how to read, except it's teaching us. "It's a good curriculum," I said. Alex wandered in carrying a plate with a sliced apple arranged as a fan. He put it on the table, as if feeding a visitor who didn't often remember to ask. "Let's consider the attic," he said, cautious. "It's not the basement, and daylight's on our side. Quick look. We can always call it later if it doesn't feel kind." Tyler appeared in the doorway, as if summoned by a word he liked to hear. "I'll scout the stairs," he offered, one hand on the rail, one breath at a time. The attic stairs hid behind a narrow door at the end of the upstairs hall, painted the walls color, same trick as the chamber, but smaller theater. The first step announced itself with a creak like a yawn. We climbed in a polite line, hands skimming the rail as if reading a sentence none of us wanted to underline. At the top, the attic unfolded in slopes and shadows. Daylight filtered through 2 dormer windows, pale as watered milk, turning dust into a slow constellation. The room smelled like cedar and 10 summers. Trunks sat like retired elephants. An iron bed frame leaned against a rafter, curled feet thinking of a time when beds were acts of sculpture. In a corner, a tin pail had collected a circle of old rain, then stopped because the roof had learned better. "Hello," I said out of habit. "Hello," said the room, not a head, just width, a whisper pretending to be ventilation. Sarah went to the nearest window, breathed a small cloud on the glass, and used the pad of her finger to draw an oval, the simplest ear. "If that's impolite," she told the house, "I'll wipe it with my sleeve." The ear lingered, haloed by light. No scolding. Tyler tested the floorboards with heel and toe. "Solid," he reported. "No surprises?" A crate labeled records. Old audio sat under the eaves. Alex glanced at me. I nodded. The kind that says yes is not forever, it is for now. And we knelt. Inside, a handful of blank sleeves like the one downstairs, a tin of needles for a phonograph, and a small wooden box with dovetailed corners and a brass hasp. It wasn't locked. Jordan eased it open with both hands, the ceremony appropriate to souvenirs that could be ancestors. Inside the box lay a handful of paper strips, each the width of a bookmark, punched with tidy holes into long sequences, the kind of thing a machine can read with confidence. At the top of each strip, in pencil, words, not sentences, seeds, listen, later, mind, water, door, good, one longer. "We heard you. They fed words into something," Jordan murmured, reverent. "A player that punched timing, a way to teach an echo to meet you instead of outrun you." My fingertips hovered over the paper. The holes were clean, no tears. Whoever punched them had patience. "It was practice," I said. "A kind way to program, not commands, choices." Sarah checked the dormer's tiny latch, lifted and set it back down like a teacup. "We could take one word downstairs," she proposed, eyes bright. "Not to play, to sit near the blank record like cousins at the same table." "Choose a small one," I said. "Choose water. It offends nobody and serves everybody." She smiled. "Water it is." We returned to the parlor, afternoon stepping softly over the threshold we'd labeled. Sarah placed the water strip beside the blank sleeve. The phonograph's horn hummed in the woods register, pleased to have company. The house did not run ahead and recite. It let the word be a neighbor. "Later," Alex said softly, to the record, to the room, and the chandelier chimed once in humor. We laughed because the house had learned to enjoy our restraint. We parceled the rest of the hour in companionable tasks. Tyler oiled a hinge in the back hall with the devotional focus of a violinist tuning a stubborn string. Jordan traced a quiet route for signal through the office and back, like a waltz played at half speed. Sarah taped her little drawings along the stairwell, each facing downward so you would be blessed with a word as you came up. "Listen," on the first landing, mine near the window, later by the attic door. Good 2 steps below my room, as if to promise sleep. I sat at the caretaker's desk and wrote a small letter to the house on a page near the end of the notebook where the spiral had bent. "Dear rooms," I wrote, "thank you for repeating only what we can hold. We'll try to leave better sentences than the ones you were given." The dictation machine clicked softly, then no more, the way a friend says, "mm-hmm," and allows the rest of your story to be yours. When late afternoon slid toward the color of lavender paper, Alex lifted his camera and caught dust as it learned to be gold. "Dusk soon," he said. "We can do a short hello goodnight and let the house have its evening." "Soup's cousin again," Tyler grinned. "Or bread and cheese and apologies to any ghosts who think we should be better cooks." "Kindly like sincerity," Sarah said. "Cheese is sincere." We were ready to go live when the parlor gave us a new trick that wasn't a trick. The blank sleeve slid half an inch, maybe, so that its lower edge lined up with the water strip precisely. It did not pretend to be magic. It behaved like gravity with feelings. "Okay," I said, hand over my mouth to make my joy smaller, more manageable. "That's enough proof to last a week." "Let's give them our best good night," Alex said, and we did. Short, grateful, nothing demanded, nothing promised beyond listening. When the red light dimmed, the room's temperature shifted up a single degree as if applause had warmed it. We breathed together, 4 humans and a house, and no one asked for anything except a chance to be better at not asking. And then, through the ceiling, through a seam we hadn't noticed, the hoarse voice offered one more star in the margin. "Remember the gate." We would. Chapter 10. Remember the gate. Dusk took the yard the way a shawl takes shoulders, laid itself down, and asked nothing back. The kitchen window held the last square of pale. The chimes under the hutch forgot their names and whispered common weather. We'd eaten the honest dinner of people who meant to sleep. Bread, cheese, and apple that tasted like a decision made kindly. And rinsed plates as if the sink were a guest, too. "Walk?" Sarah asked. Not a plan so much as a question you ask when your shoes remember a path. "The gate," Tyler said, because the house had said it first. He grabbed a flashlight and didn't turn it on. "We'll take it, just in case the dark wants a little help." We left a lamp low in the parlor for the house, the way you leave a porch light for someone who might still be on the road. The blank sleeve and the water strip sat companionably on the low table like old friends not forcing conversation. The portrait of Dr. Sorrell watched with what I was willing tonight to call benevolence. Distance makes some faces kinder. Outside, night air had the clean edge of tide change. The fog had gone to ground and became the grass itself. The path to the hedge knew us. It carried our hips the way a chair remembers the sitter who reads. At the gate, the latch lifted with that same considerate shrug. "Remember the gate," the house had said, and the air said it back without words. This is where you decide how much outside to invite in. We stood just inside, not out. No one had to vote on it. The sea, visible only as a moving dark, made the sound of breath rehearsed slowly. A moth touched Tyler's sleeve and discovered it wasn't a lamp. He grinned and shook his head like a coach telling whether it couldn't make practice cancel. "Here," he said, and put the flashlight on the gate post without turning it on, a quiet anchor. We listened. A minute is longer than you think when no one is filling it. The shells under the hutch tried a single soft chime and let it go. From the notch down the path, the spruce moved their shoulders as if agreeing that standing was work enough. Kindly's voice arrived in the hush between our inhalations, the way a bell arrives when you don't know you're near a church. She didn't use a word. She warmed the air. The hoarse voice followed, steadier now, edges sanded by use. "Step back." not alarm, not command. A tide chart in a sentence. I took one step back. So did Sarah and Jordan. Tyler lingered a beat. You could see the old athlete in him, proud to have been the one the night trusted with the front of the line. Then gave the step like a gift. A blur past the gate where our bodies had been a breath before. Not an animal, not a wind. More like the memory of someone who made this walk every evening of their life and couldn't bear to stop. It brushed my sleeve like a thank you for not colliding. We're sharing, I said, because some reassurances are for the reassurance maker. Sharon, the hedge, seemed to sigh. Jordan lifted his recorder just enough to archive the moment without catching it in a jar. If you're looking for your path, he said to the air in the tone he reserves for tech support and lost things, we left it where you like it. The blur softened. It might have become fog. It might have decided it had always been. Kindly exhaled in the single-ply way she has when she approves of our restraint. The hoarse voice tried a new sentence and chose each word as if it had weight. Thank you for stepping where you are. Sarah laughed, the small kind that doesn't scare moths. We'll put that on a sign, she said, right inside the front door. Right above my bed, Tyler added. Maybe I'll finally sleep without running lanes in my head. We stood another minute and gave the lookout our absence. Some places need a little emptiness to stay true to their job. Then we turned back, the path receiving us like a rug that loved the sound of socks. At the kitchen door, the radio upstairs clicked once, checking in, not summoning. The parlor chime gave a shy bell, as if greeting us from a different floor. We closed the door with the care of people who know wood has a long memory. Inside, the house felt like a patient that has learned to breathe from the diaphragm. Hot chocolate? Alex suggested, already fetching a pan, saying it in the tone he usually saves for cut, and we have it. No laugh tonight, just a bedtime voiceover between the mugs. No voiceover, I said, smiling, just voices. He looked relieved. The pan sighed under heat. Milk learned the shape of simmer without showing off. The smell of cocoa and cinnamon passed through the vent and made the back hall less of a corridor, more of a sleeve. We took our cups to the parlor, lamps low, threshold sketches leaning along the baseboards like a chorus that had decided to sit cross-legged. The blank sleeve stayed obedient. The water strip kept it company. Tyler put his mug on the same coaster he'd used since morning, and the coaster thanked him by not sticking. I want to read you something, I said, and lifted the caretaker's notebook we'd brought down, thumb marking the place with the sketched gate latch. But not the letter. A list from the margin, small rules written in pencil so they could be changed. I read, open what breathes, shut what slams, leave one light like a promise, fold blankets so future hands feel expected, mind the words you teach the paint. When you can, put water back. Sarah breathed the kind of yes that tastes like apple. I'll draw that, she said. A page of rules with margins left for amendments. Jordan tapped his recorder, then left it off. I'll make a copy of the diagram, he offered. Not to take, to leave, in case the paper gets tired. Tyler stretched his long legs and let his head find the back of the couch like a kid allowed to stay up. I'll sweep again, he said, and oil one more hinge, not because it squeaks, because it could. We sipped. We listened to the sound of mugs meeting saucers, a domestic percussion. The house repeated only what would be improved by the repeating. Good, a heartbeat late. Later, a bedtime word laid on our tongues like a lozenge. Listen, so soft it could have been the cup asking the saucer not to chip it. At some point, Alex said low, we should think about leaving. Not now, not tomorrow. I just want to decide it before the house decides it for us. Deciding is a kind of leaving early on purpose, I said. So when it happens, you recognize your own handwriting. He nodded and didn't shoot the nod. He let it be unrecorded, which felt like the truest version. The chandelier offered one small bell for the hour we did not name. The yard's chimes clicked like teeth, remembering a lullaby. Upstairs, somewhere near my room, a floorboard made the sound of a person choosing to sit on a bed instead of pacing. The house had learned enough of us to practice rest. I carried my mug to the balcony door and breathed on the glass, not to draw, just to make a temporary cloud. It cleared, slow, the way mornings clear a stubborn mind. In the reflection, I saw our odd little family in the parlor, Alex leaning forward, elbows on knees, Jordan half-curled, making a cushion mean more than stuffing, Sarah with charcoal on her cheek like a blessing, Tyler smiling into his cocoa as if it were telling him a joke about fatigue. Behind us, the portrait's eyes, gentled by lamplight, kindly came so close her presence warmed my ear. Good, she said, and the hoarse voice added, proud of the effort. Gate. We remembered, I said. We won't forget. We set our cups in the sink and rinsed them, not for cleanliness, but for goodbye. Hall lights down to a hush. Stairwell blessed by listening mind, and later and good. At his post in the back hall, Tyler palmed the chamber door from an inch away and gave it his 5 breaths in each direction, a benediction he'd learned without a sermon. The brass wore his not touch like a polish. In my room, the radio lamped a little as if someone had put a nightlight near its pride. I turned the dial 1 notch left, rest, not off. The balcony stayed latched. The ivy on the wallpaper chose to climb only where paper allowed. I tucked a caretaker's notebook under my pillow like kids tuck library books for courage, not content. Before I lay down, I opened it to the rules page again and added a line at the bottom in pencil so faint I had to squint even as I wrote it. Remember the gate. Remember the mouth is a door. Leave both cracked, not wide. The house like that. The vent whispered the S of cracked like a kind secret. The parlor chimed for the last time that day, then decided it had said enough. The sea rehearsed sleep on our behalf. I turned out the lamp. The radio waited a heartbeat and then turned out its glow as if to say, together. In the dark, we were more than 4 bodies and a building. We were a conversation, finally learning how to end a sentence without needing to correct it. Just as I drifted, the slope where thoughts lose their edges, the hoarse voice tried one more thing and got it right. Morning again. Yes, I said, already halfway there. Later. Chapter 11. Small weather morning repeated itself like a good habit. The radio breathed, the house stretched, the sea rehearsed. My first thought was not of fear, which felt like the best proof we'd been good guests. I washed my face with water that understood porcelain, dressed in yesterday's sweater because it had learned a house's temperature, and checked the caretaker's notebook under my pillow like a talisman that didn't mind doing clerical work. At the top of the stairs, Sarah had taped a fresh slip of paper where the wall meets the landing. In her tidy hand, leave it kinder, She'd underlined it once, softly. Tyler stood in the back hall in sock feet, doing his 5-breath drill to the chamber door, the rhythm now as natural as a pulse. Jordan padded past with a mug, listening with his whole body, even while the kettle still thought about boiling. Alex appeared with the camera on his shoulder, the way a musician wears an instrument even when they're not playing. He had that relaxed face he gets when he's decided not to capture something and is therefore able to see it more clearly. We made a breakfast we didn't deserve. Eggs folded like letters, toast that learned from yesterday, fruit that tasted like someone had apologized to it in a sweet voice. We ate slow, and the house repeated only the sounds that improved with echo. Spoon, thank you, good. Today, Alex said, we plan our leaving. He said it without dread. He said it like a person who has learned the trick of ending rehearsals while everyone still loves the play. Not yet, Jordan added quickly, because joy is a reflex. Just decide the shape so we recognize it. Shape, Sarah echoed, pencil tapping the rim of her mug. A leaving with a porch light ending. Tyler grinned, and a gate check. We agreed. One more daylight round of thresholds and office. A visit to the bluff with a note in the hiker box. A final sweep in pairs to make sure our sentences were the ones a kind house should keep. Dusk would be for goodbyes. Night would be for sleep and not much else. Morning, then the road. We didn't say numbers. We didn't need them. The office liked our plan. The notebook lay open to our rules page. Beside my faint pencil line about the mouth as a door, someone, somewhen, had added a tiny drawing of a key with no teeth. A skeleton key, but kinder. A symbol that said the door was mostly about the turning, not the trick. Jordan made a neat copy of the acoustic diagram in a blank ledger page and labeled it not with room names, but with our words. Listen, mind, later, water, good, gate. He left the original where it belonged. Sarah penciled a border of small moths around the rules, each with 2 dots for eyes and nothing scary to report. Tyler oiled the last hinge on the kitchen door and bowed to it when it sighed in relief. "Parlor?" Alex asked. We went. The blank labeled record sleeve still rested beside the water strip as if they'd become neighbors who bring each other mail. The phonograph horn gleamed like it had been polished not by hands, but by attention. The portrait of Dr. Sorrell had lost some of its distance in the mercies of morning. He looked less like a man who invents chambers, and more like a person who once believed that better microphones were the same as better listening, a forgivable error. "I want to thank it," I said, and realized as the sentence left me that I wasn't addressing the house in general. I meant the record, not to play, to praise restraint. I touched the cardboard gently. "You were patient," I told it. "You reminded us that not every story needs a needle." Kindly approved with a breath that rode the baseboards and warmed my ankles. The hoarse voice, today more sure like a woman who has accepted she's allowed to talk in her own kitchen, added, "Door." Then, "Mouth." Both mindfully, I agreed. We won't make promises we can't keep once the road takes us. Alex caught a small shot of the sleeve and water strip. Just a second, a cutaway to help future him. Remember not to be greedy. "The bluff?" he asked. "Before the wind shows off." We took the path through the yard with the same respect you give a book you're rereading for the first time. The gate lifted its latch in our hands like a good dog that has learned not to jump. The lookout wore a new sheen. Last night's damp set into the stone's memory, the hiker box standing brave against the salt. The metal loop pinged once, a greeting. I opened the box and found the pages had dried into a new stiffness, the kind paper gets when it's been wrung and smoothed and asked to be strong. We wrote our note together, Sarah's neat script taking dictation from all of us. We listened with you. We left the garden gate cracked. If you hear echoes, teach them kindness. If you repeat only what you can carry. If you need water, it's in the kitchen, third glass from the right. M-A-S-J-T. Tyler laughed, soft. I like that we left it practical. Hauntings love practical, I said. It's what keeps them from being only sad poetry. We stood our minute at the edge and let the sea have us. Kindly joined in the way fog leans. She didn't repeat us. She permitted us to be here with our breath. The hoarse voice didn't speak. Instead, she made the world an inch wider, enough that the fear of edges lost interest in our shoulders. Back at the house, we parceled tasks like gifts. Jordan made a quiet route card for future guests, an arrowed line from the kitchen to the office to the parlor that argues with no floors. Sarah tucked 3 of her threshold drawings in the caretaker's notebook and left 3 in the parlor, small benedictions angled toward the carpet like place cards. Tyler wrote a single rule on a sticky note and stuck it inside the chamber door's frame. Not on the door, not an imposition. 5 breaths each way. He underlined each 5 with no numbers at all, just small lines like stairs. I went upstairs to my room, our room, the radio, and me. The brass echo plate caught the light one more time like a parting wink. I sat on the bed and placed my hands on my knees and spoke only what I could carry. Morning taught me how to walk to the edge with company, I said. Night taught me how to end a sentence without being afraid of what it will sound like when it comes back to me. The radio hummed, gentle as an engine idling far away. Good, it said, and then, for the first time in its own voice, without borrowing mine, rest. I will, I promised. One more night. Then I'll let you practice with someone else. Downstairs, the parlor chimed. One bright note like a coin in a dish. Afternoon settled itself like a shawl. We did one more loop, as planned, but slower, the way people walk through a house before selling it, touching door frames, laying palms on places that kept secrets without turning them into souvenirs. In the back hall, at the chamber door, kindly greeted us. The hoarse voice met us, too. Now, just a voice, not a category. Leaving? She asked, not needy. Soon, I said. We'll leave the gate cracked. The voice tried another word and fit into it like a sweater. Again. Yes, I said, smiling, and felt the house smile back in its own way. A seam in the ceiling relaxed. A draft chose not to exist. The portrait's varnish warmed like honey, steeping in tea. We rested through late afternoon and let dusk find us already tidy. Alex set the camera on the parlor bookshelf and filmed 1 minute of empty room by lamplight. Not for content, he said, for memory. He turned the camera off and placed his palm on the shelf as if to permission the wood to tell this story later, if it wanted. We made our goodnight rounds. Kitchen, office, parlor, back hall, stairs, rooms. Lamps lowered, but not off. Slips of listen and mind and later and good, where hands would find them without being told. The blank sleeve and water strip left side by side, a still life of restraint. The caretaker's notebook opened to the rules page with our faint additions. Remember the gate. Remember the mouth is a door. Leave both cracked, not wide. When the sea darkened into its own thought, we stood in the foyer like people about to brave weather, not leaving now, just rehearsing. Alex cleared his throat and found his warm-voiced cadence, the one he used without mics. "Thank you for hosting us," he said to the chandeliers, to the vents, to the rafters and pipes. "We tried to be good." The chandelier answered with the smallest bell. Upstairs, my radio breathed yes. The vent near the chamber door said, "Gate." The way a friend would text single word and you'd know everything you needed. We said good night to each other, the way old friends do when they've earned an early morning. Sarah touched her charcoal-smudged cheek to my temple and whispered, "Leave it kinder." Jordan squeezed my shoulder once, 2 letters in a pressure alphabet that meant safe. Tyler bumped my knuckles and didn't make it a joke. Alex put his hand over mine for 1 heartbeat and then removed it before it scared the air. In my room, the balcony door watched me without asking to be opened. The radio glowed once, faint, then chose darkness to show its trust. I turned my lamp down until it made a spill on the nightstand like a lake of patient honey. I tucked myself into the courage of sheets and listened to the house listening to me, the way you do before a trip, when you're grateful for a roof and trying to memorize it just in case roofs are different where you're going. Somewhere near midnight, the house repeated a word we hadn't taught it, though maybe we had by behavior. It said, very quietly, with us, not ahead. Enough. Not as in stop, as in sufficient, adequate, no more performance required. Yes, I whispered into the pillow, enough. Sleep arrived as if it had been following at a respectful distance all day and only now dared to catch up. The house agreed. The sea agreed. The chimes didn't argue, and the voices that had learned how to be voices again, Kindly and her companion, did not need to say good night. They had already said it when they taught us where to stand. Chapter 12. Porch light. Ending. We woke as if the house had placed the morning in our hands and trusted us not to drop it. The radio breathed once, then settled into the sort of quiet that means, I'll remember you even if you don't say goodbye perfectly. The sea rolled its shoulders. The chimes, generous, did not interrupt. We didn't film. Sometimes you carry less by leaving a pocket empty. Breakfast was the last of the bread, the apology of jam, the honest coffee you make when the drive is part of the ritual. We cleaned as if tidying were a language the house translated well, rinsed mugs, folded throws, smoothed what would wrinkle without complaint. Sarah erased a faint smudge from the wall with the edge of her eraser and left a tiny moth in the baseboard's corner as a signature only light would learn. Jordan checked the caretaker's notebook, tucked our pages straight, and closed it on the rules the way you'll close a hymn book when the melody has stopped, but the note is still landing. Tyler stood last time by the chamber door and offered his 5 breaths in each direction, the small devotion that had taught his body how to be soft where it once braced. He didn't touch the knob. He didn't need to. The brass held a cool that felt like a blessing, the kind you recognize because it asks nothing back. Gate, he said, more to himself than to us, and when no one argued, we went. The yard had the hands in pockets posture of a place politely pretending it doesn't mind you leaving. The garden gate lifted for us, and did not click. We kept it cracked the way we'd promised. At the bluff, the hiker box waited patient. Our note had buckled a little where Fogg tired of keeping out of other people's business. Someone, night, wind, the old habit of tides, had underlined listen with a ripple. The metal loop pinged once like a friend tapping a railing to say, "I can't walk you all the way, but I'll wave until you're gone." "Thank you," I said, to the cliff, to the water, to the air that had learned our names without practicing them ahead. Kindly warmed the space between our shoulders. The hoarse voice, stronger now, found a word that fit and wore it without apology. Again. "Not soon," I said. "Soon enough." On the way back, we stopped in the office for the last time. Alex framed a single still of the desk and the dictation machine, then set the camera down and pressed his palm to the blotter as if signing a ledger with heat. Jordan left his copied diagram tucked beneath the wire binding, a redundancy offered with love. Sarah taped one more slip by the door frame in that tidy hand of hers. "Leave it kinder." Tyler slid a fresh coaster under the glass we'd stored by the sink, then laughed at himself, because the act was both practical and tender, which is a kind of joke houses understand. The parlor gave us our last errands without words. The blank labeled record sleeve stayed where we'd left it beside the water strip. Neighbors content with the mail collected. I touched the sleeve lightly. "We'll let you be the story," I told it. "We don't have to hear it to know it's safe with you." The horn answered in Wood's language, a small warmth, no show. Upstairs, the radio clicked, resting, not off, like a host switching off the porch light after the taxi has turned a corner. Bags came quietly down the stairs. The foyer learned our heavier footsteps and didn't scold. We stood by the front door, as people do who have practiced their leaving on small goodbyes all morning, so the large one would arrive with less theater. Alex set the keys on the hall table in a neat fan, tag sides up: attic, cellar, office, chamber. He touched the tag that read chamber with the back of one knuckle, irreverent almost, and stepped back. "Last rules," I said, and read from the caretaker's notebook, the page of penciled mercy where our additions rested like stitches. "Open what breathes, shut what slams. Leave one light like a promise. Fold blankets so future hands feel expected. Mind the words you teach the paint. Put water back. Remember the gate. Remember the mouth is a door. Leave both cracked, not wide." The chandelier answered with a single bell, not ahead of me and not after, exactly with me, as if we'd finally learned one another's timing. We placed our palms on the door in turn, thank you through wood. Jordan went first, fingers splayed like he was mapping signal. Sarah left a smudge of charcoal on the edge of the panel and wiped it off with her sleeve, smiling at the restraint. Tyler rested his hand an inch away, that tender, not touch, and breathed once, twice, 5. Alex pressed the heel of his palm softly to the wood and closed his eyes like a man forgiving himself for once believing proof mattered more than kindness. I touched last, the way you do when you're carrying a sentence you're ready to say. "Good," the house said. We stepped into the rain's gentle rehearsal. The yard accepted our backs as if backs were just faces with different work to do. The car smelled like fabric and the kind of dust you can only see in sunlight. Alex did not film the drive. Jordan tuned the radio to nothing on purpose. Sarah rolled her window down an inch to hear the way tires translate wet into story. Tyler placed his weight in the footwell the way a runner says goodbye to a track by leaving his stride there for a second to practice. At the end of the gravel, the signal bars on our phones made promises we didn't collect. The road took us without fuss. The house receded to a square of attitude in the rear view, then to a smudge, then to a memory being careful. We didn't speak for a while. It's important to carry silence across thresholds the way you carry soup. Steady, 2 hands, no sudden stops. When the wipers found their rhythm, Alex laughed once, quietly, as if surprised by his own ease. Sarah hummed half of the house's lullaby and let it go. Jordan tapped his recorder off, just to keep the muscle happy. Tyler breathed like a man who would still do his 5-breath drill in new doorways because he wanted to, not because the night made him. At the first long bend, the car radio found a seam between stations, the thin place where voices practice being static. It did not jump ahead of us. It did not trap us in a confession. It offered a single, soft syllable on our timing, with not before, listen, we would, we drove on. Epilogue, gentle afterglow. Back home, voices take different shapes. The kettle's whistle will be rude again until you forgive it. Floors won't know your stride yet. Mirrors will tilt your face to prove they have an opinion. That first evening, I turned my own radio on and met only the steady hush of a station forgetting to exist. I turned it off, and the hush remained, which felt right. Not haunted, practiced. I slept with the window cracked, and the mouth of the room cracked too, the gentlest version of the caretaker's rule. In that first between-dream place, I thought I heard the house we'd left clear its throat delicately. If it did, it was only to say good. The word has a way of fermenting into every home that's been taught to use it. I did not test it. Testing is a young person's sport. Listening is the quiet, older one. Morning after, we message the way people do who have left a place kinder and are trying not to ruin the afterglow by making it about content. Alex sent a photo of his camera bag sleeping on a chair in new light. Sarah sent a sketch of a moth without a body, just the suggestion of wings framing air. Jordan sent a map of his apartment with a little line from desk to kitchen labeled Quiet Lane. Tyler sent a picture of his front door and beneath it a sticky note, 5 breaths each way. I found myself counting nothing as I walked to make tea, just placing weight. Here, then here. I folded a blanket so future me would feel expected. I left a glass of water by the sink because you never know who might need it later, even if it's just your own hands. I wrote, "Leave it kinder" on an envelope and tucked it in a drawer like a savings account. From time to time, in those soft minutes when houses decide whether to be loud, I feel a small permission arrive in the room ahead of me. Not a voice exactly, more like a timing I recognize. It does not catch my sentences and repeat them. It does not corner me with memory. It makes space and steps aside and says, with the confidence of a place that learned boundaries and blanket corners and gates, later. And every now and then, waiting at a traffic light, pausing on a landing, listening to a kettle that finally learned grace. A single word lands on my timing, not ahead, not behind, exactly with good. I don't record it. I let it live where it is. The story isn't gone. It's resting in wood and water and in the gentle echo of 5 measured breaths near a door. If we go back someday, the gate will remember our hands. If we don't, the house will teach the next mouth to be doors that open only as wide as kindness. For now, I breathe at thresholds. I leave a porch light like a promise. I keep the radio's dial just a hair to the left of on. And when silence arrives, I repeat only what I can carry, which turns out to be more than I feared and less than I used to brag. Listen, the quiet says, always with me, never ahead. I do